Alright, bosses, what was on someone's CV that took you straight to hell yes or hell no? I had a resume from a potential interview candidate that listed his reason for leaving his last job as, "I found a buddy." No further explanation. You bet your sweet patootie I called him in for an interview. As a strategy to get an interview, it worked. The condensed story is that he found a body while walking the grounds at his job, checking to make sure all gated areas were secure and clear of debris. When he found the body, he called the police. He was fired because he broke internal reporting protocol. He was supposed to notify his immediate supervisor and not outside authorities. It was the supervisor's responsibility to call the police. Somebody sent over their CV written entirely in papyrus font from Microsoft Word. May as well have gone all out and used windings. I was hiring for a very competitive IT role last year, and one guy, who didn't have the best real-world experience, added a single QR code at the bottom of his CV. I scanned it and it took me to an online portfolio, including a secure lab with simulations he'd run, allowing me to test scripts he had written and also play around in his lab environment. Honestly, I've never seen anything like it. The guy got the job and has continued to be a great fit. I had someone hand me a resume with the HTML code of an adult website URL mixed in midway through. I guess he was watching naughty things while updating his resume and somehow dragged in a link. Guess he didn't proofread it. One resume read, "Expert in indoor horticulture." Indoor horticulture was in quotes. I received a resume from an applicant that included a letter of recommendation from his cat. The letter was hilarious and signed with a clip art paw print. I thought it was great and I wanted to bring him in, but the manager for the position wasn't crazy about it. I guess the point is, humor in an application can work from you, but it really depends on who's reading. Second language was Klingon. Too bad the guy was a total jerk during his interview. A guy put his bench, squat, and deadlift numbers on his personal skills section for a bar job. It spawned a long tradition of asking bartenders what they could bench when they applied for a job. I feel like it's a 70-30 chance of this either being the world's biggest D-bag or just having a terrific sense of humor. If he put that and then showed up as the world's scrawniest dude, it would be epic. Hiring for retail. Two all-time favorites. Experienced at stalking the cooler. Responsible for closing paperwork after each shift. Except they left the F out of shift. Hiring a software engineer. Among his impressive list of skills were Notepad and WordPad. I have several CVs that will never make the cut. I keep them in a non-GDPR-proof binder hidden out of view. I work as an IT recruiter. Here are some of my favorites. Normal CV on the job site. Junior profile, 18 years old, just finished school. Pretty normal CV, except at the bottom he writes that he has a small member and he likes guys. The CV goes back and forth in the office. Eventually we decide to call him and ask why he put that on his CV. Turns out he had to make the CV for school, he left his PC open, and one of his classmates thought it was funny to add that to his profile. A CV with a picture of a man only in his boxers. No headshot, just his abs, boxers, and legs. We did not call that guy. Several CVs with people ranting against the government, religion, or anything else. Obvious proof of people's mental abilities. People writing things such as, "I will do the time for the crime I may or may not have committed." I haven't called any of those. So many cover letters with the wrong company on them. Recruiters will forget to change your name when sending you an in-mail. And applicants will forget to change the name when applying. We really need to get rid of mandatory cover letters. I'll still call them if their profile is decent, to be honest. And people being open about just putting their CV online so they can keep their unemployment benefits. At least they don't waste my time. I was working for a small digital agency and we were looking for designers and illustrators. General multi-skilled creative types. The boss wanders in with a sly grin and a big folder. It was from a guy who wanted a job. I came over and he started flicking through it. Page after page of raunchy cartoons. Lots of them furry-type stuff. Women's chesty bits, butts, lips, figures intertwined, and lots of detailed musculature. So I was like, well, it's quite good for what it is, but what else is there? Is there another section? Nope, nothing else. Just a folder completely full of cartoon people that looked like they were straight from the page after Rule 33, and a bunch of anthropomorphized animals in compromising positions. He was not hired. It wasn't because of the cartoons, it was because it was all just those cartoons. Would have liked to see some commercial applications of illustration, or something showing he could work to requirements, or a variety of work showing different styles. This was like 15 years ago. I had one application dropped off by the applicant's mother. She told me, "If you hire him, you probably shouldn't trust him with money." I threw the application away after she turned around. I was hiring for a sales clerk position at my family bakery. "Hello, my good man. I would like to work at your factory." "I don't have a factory. Read the frickin' job description." I had a candidate who worked in counseling in the past, mostly with kids who'd been through trauma. They had a line on their resume that said, "Expert in child kidnapping." I had to at least give them an interview because I understood the intent, but the wording was just hilariously unfortunate. For those seeking clarity, he was an expert in kidnapping cases. No, he didn't get the job. Nice guy, but just not a good fit for the role. A guy said we had to hire him because he had a disability and it would be discrimination if we didn't. He wasn't hired. He called the CEO a few times to complain. We went through it at least 3 times over the course of multiple hirings. Guy submitted a resume claiming to be a ghostwriter for a local college. In lieu of a college degree, he listed the units he wrote assignments for and the average grades his clients got. My concerns were, where I live, many academic ghostwriters blackmail students post-submission for more money, or they send source materials to the lecturer. This in one of the world's top 50 universities. So I could probably expect similar crap in the workplace. Also, how can I trust them with sensitive information like patents or source code or internal IP or client information shared in confidence? Then there's the fact that 50% of the staff would hate this person right out the gate. They'd be miserable and my team would lose morale. If his background came up, it would also be an affront to an institution we often collaborated with. And I already had one butthole making the team's life a misery. Couldn't risk a second one. That's a significant red flag. We used to do a lot of rejection based on gaffes in people's CVs and cover letters. We'd reject on a faux pas. And then we realized we were chewing through good candidates who didn't have the money to use a professional writing service. If we're hiring for a developmental role, someone we expect needs to grow, then we shouldn't hold them to the standard we would expect after they've developed. We decided to start picking resumes for experience we think we want and ignore minor mistakes or odd formatting choices. We even re-interviewed people we think just had an off day. Now we have to do this because qualified candidates for our positions are fairly rare, so we have to be a little more flexible. Had a resume come in from a guy we fired about 2 years previously. Had a gap in his employment where the time was he had been with us, so it's not even like he didn't realize. The confidence to apply for a job you've been fired from. Man, that's something. I had a headhunter submit my resume to a place that I'd quit a year earlier. My old boss called me and asked, "You're not dumb enough to consider coming back here, are you?" Oh god, I can feel the internal cringe already. I mean, I've never been fired, but I have left jobs just because they were objectively bad and I hated my bosses. Even having them think that I was considering coming back is producing a full-body shudder. I work at an escape room. We once received a resume that consisted of a web page address protected by a password and 3 well-crafted riddles that we had to solve to get the password. We spent an hour doing it with 2 colleagues, and it included decrypting a code from a specific frame of Zodiac by David Fincher. It was simply amazing. Sadly, we weren't hiring at the time, and she had found another job when we started hiring again. Since I'm receiving a lot of answers, including pieces of advice on what we should have done, here's some important precisions. And no, we shouldn't have hired her to design a room. First, because we didn't have any room to design, our building was full, and it was more than a year until we needed to create a room. Second, because we already have designers. Remember, there's 13 of us plus the bosses, and we all have the skills she had. Third, because designing a room is a 3 to 4 week job, not a full-time one. Fourth, because it requires other skills than simply creating riddles, and neither you and I know if she had them. Fifth, because you simply don't hire a newbie to design your next 20 to 30 grand room that will be 1/6 of your company revenue for the next 3 to 6 years. That's absolutely nonsensical. To the people saying we're idiots for not having hired her, you know nothing. This one was 14 pages. ETA, finance position with 5 to 10 years of experience. There's only so many different ways you can describe financial responsibilities. And summarizing is a skill. The guy never pitched for the interview. I got my first IT job because I'd put additional skills modifying Fallout 3 using Gek. I just loaded custom packs and got them to work, and they gave me a job miraculously even though I was super underqualified. Was looking for a casual salesperson. This 18-year-old put a selfie of her which was taken in a car showing a lot of cleave. Not what I was looking for. I guess she was hoping I was a middle-aged single man. I have incredible attention to detail. I said that once in the email body. Proceeded to forget to attach the CV. Bad emails. When interviewing for a professional position and your contact email is 69 smoker girl 420 blazing, it's a terrible way to start the resume. I had a funny typo on a resume I once reviewed. It read, assassinated the lead florist on site. Obviously, it was meant to say assisted. For years, I was applying for jobs with a high school qualification for art and design listed as fart and design. I got 2 jobs in that time and countless rejections. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Had a hairdresser apply for our position. The position was for a nurse. They said they wanted to try out the medical field. No, they didn't get the job. I once saw underachievements on a CV. Former world's youngest person. It made me laugh so much I gave them an interview. In the end, they didn't sell themselves well enough to get the role, but it brightened my morning of filtering. Not so much the content of the application, but what was on the application. A handprint. It was for a food handling position, and he was grungy enough to leave a print from where he held down the paper to write on it. Instant no. Looking back, yeah, there was a chance it'd have been fine, we could have taught proper hand-washing and all that, but at the time we declined to grant an interview. When every referee has a sentence or two about how we shouldn't call them because they parted on bad terms or it had been a while. Some applicants listed referees who, when called, barely remembered working with the person. I'm surprised he has me listed as a reference, since he tried to sue me earlier this year. Is sadly a true story. I was on a hiring committee for a college instructor. The candidate was asked to provide a statement of commitment to the college and its mission. An entire paragraph was plagiarized, copied, and pasted from a website. I noticed that the writer's voice drastically changed, so I pasted a sentence into Google and immediately found the source. He did not get an interview. I once received a resume written in size 60 font. It was just 1 page. I was interviewing people for an IT company. Guy put experience with SCSI on his resume. For non-techies, SCSI is a type of hard drive pronounced as he wrote it, but never in a million years written that way. I was working at a job and my roommate wanted to apply. On the application he wrote, "Can make 3-minute ramen in 2 minutes 50. He got the interview. Hey, that's worthwhile. Even as a guy who can cook well, I still feel like making literally anything takes at least twice as long as was advertised in the recipe. A few years ago, I bought an already working franchise location in the next town over, which is a very small and quiet town. The previous owner let go of his employees with a severance, so I didn't have to take over her contract. Being my new and only store, I decided to work by myself until getting settled and hire help if I seemed to need it. The first day I opened the store, about an hour after opening, the former employee comes by to introduce herself and to drop a resume. I tell her that I'll consider it since she worked there for about 5 years, mostly on her own. The previous owner was not a hands-on boss, and I put her CV in a drawer. During the rest of the day, I noticed people standing on the sidewalk looking in, and after doing that, they came in and made a purchase. After 4 or 5 people did this, I asked a woman what made her look before coming in, and she said, "Oh, I wouldn't have come in if that red-headed C-word was still working here." Needless to say, I put an "under new management" sign on the door using the back of the C-word's CV, and nobody else looked before coming in that day. Recruiter here, I have a few. A resume saying, "Hire me, lol." A video interview with another candidate. She was in a hospital bed and just gave birth to her son prior to her interview. Hired. Another video interview, the guy was chugging a Tallboy Coors Light. Had a kid applying to work at a Sam Goody as a stock boy write that he was a petroleum transference engineer for Exxon at his last job. His job was pumping gas. I hired him on the spot. That sounds exactly like something I'd write. I'm not even unironic about it. You should see the crap I wrote on my one. When I was 16 and looking for a job, my only other job before that had been paperboy. I wrote, "News Media Distributor," or some crap, and wrote bullet points underneath. "Liaison with clientele within the local area on a daily basis." and used algorithms to compute the quickest supply chain route. More recently, I was a stevedore or dock rat or dock willy, docker, longshoreman, whatever the hell you want to call it. I wrote port operative. I've written so much crap, but maybe that's why I can't get a job. Once I received a resume that had raid leader for World of Warcraft in top guild of a server. This was about 9 years ago. The other hiring managers laughed their butts off and said this guy was a joke, and they all dismissed him. Me, I asked the guy to come in for an interview, and he did pretty well, and I hired him. The reason I brought the guy in for the interview was because I'm an avid WoW player at that time, and I knew the crap that leaders had to go through. Trying to get a large number of people together, coordinate resources and rewards, getting guides together and telling people to up their healing or DPS and not stand in fire. All done virtually via vent and forum postings, meaning you never met these guild members in person. You need some great leadership skills and project management. Also, at the time I was dealing with a lot of people off-site, so I thought this guy would be a good fit. 9 years later, I've left the company now, and the WoW guy I hired turned out to be great, especially in the last 9 years when corporations decided that working from home and virtual meetings were the way to go, to cut costs. His skill as a raid leader translated very well with remote project management and is now the manager of the hiring managers that laughed at his resume. This was at a Fortune 500 financial company. In short, if you stand in that fire, I'm not healing your butt. I once wrote stuff like, able to plug in USB on first try, and can do up to 10 push-ups before going into sleep mode in the additional skills section. They later told me I was invited because they wanted to see if I could really do the first one. I applied with a cover letter, the first paragraph of which entirely detailed my favorite drinks, and the subject line, copywriter, will work for beer, to a job I was underqualified for. It caught the eye of the headhunter for the ad agency and was enough to get me an interview. Shortly after that, I was hired and ended up working there for a few years. I remember writing that letter and feeling frustrated because I wasn't hearing back from any of the places I was applying. So I said, screw it, I'm going to write one that's more me. I should note that this probably wouldn't work everywhere, but it fit with the culture of that agency. Plus, the job listing said that I'd be working for beer brands as clients and that free beer was a perk of the job. I was an AV engineering team lead for a startup for a while. A couple of years ago, I was hiring to fill about 30 slots of a very basic AV tech position. I had about 20 applicants at the time, so if you were reasonably competent, you were in. I got one resume and cover letter through our website from a guy who I will henceforth refer to as the screw-up. Every third word on this thing was spelled incorrectly, punctuation was optional, and spacing was randomized. Thinking, this can't be real. I called one of the guy's references. Oh boy, did I ever get an earful from a grumpy business owner. The screw-up in question was so much of a screw-up that he was applying for positions in my area because he was effectively blacklisted from just about every job site and labor company in his hometown, a medium-sized US city with a very, very large audiovisual job market. The reference told me that he had told the screw-up not to hand his name or number out as a reference, because the screw-up had caused more than $200,000 of damages to the reference company's equipment the previous year. He went on to name, correctly and from memory, the other references that the screw-up had likely listed on his resume. Friendly competition of the reference, and he told me that they'd all say the same thing. So I called around. The screw-up was apparently quite the liability. We did not end up hiring him, but I made some new business friends in another city. We've since collaborated on a couple of larger conference gigs that hit their city first and then our city afterwards, so thanks, screw-up. Wait, so if the guy did $200,000 worth of damages in the one job and had wreaked similar havoc all over his hometown, it's not out of the question that he caused $500,000 in destruction, possibly crossing over the $1 million mark depending on how many other jobs he'd held that he hadn't listed. I mean, I kind of want to observe a guy this bad at doing everything. From a safe distance, of course, behind bulletproof glass. Not hiring, but one time a guy had excessive pickle tickling. We've toned it down, use your imagination viewers, listed as one of his main hobbies. Not recommended unless you want to hire for a product tester in certain branches. We did check up. He had his CV proofread by one of his friends. Always proofread your friend's proofreading, folks. Hired for a junior UX role. An applicant's CV header was, "Your bubbly UX designer," which was good enough to warrant an interview. In the interview, when we asked what their dream job was if they were in a completely different area, they answered, "Juventus manager." We knew she was a keeper. Someone had spelled "of" incorrectly on their entire CV. OV. I almost wanted to interview them just to see how they remembered to breathe. I know a guy who put that he had a black belt in full contact origami. Well, it is said that jiu-jitsu is the gentle art of folding clothes while people are still in them. I've seen resumes that didn't have a name on them. For the love of God, triple-check the spelling of any names. The number of CVs that simply go straight in the bin because they can't spell my or my company's name correctly is too damn high. Someone sent us a 20-minute long video on why they wanted to work with us. Not hired, it was just too much. Another applicant explained her family situation honestly in the cover letter. She fit our office culture as well as her amazing skills, and we hired her. I saw one resume state that for work experience, hacker, at the internet. They also stated they've been both hired and fired for hacking various things, and have never been convicted of a computer crime.
Middle school teachers, what is the cringiest thing you've seen a student do? Director of Technology here. I don't really have much to do with the kids at the school I work at, but I definitely have a cringy moment. Called down to the middle school from my office to debug a problem for a teacher. The classrooms in this building all have 2 doors. One door opens into the building hallways, the other opens to the outside. My office is across a field from the middle school, so I decide to just cut across the field and enter the side door to the classroom instead of going all the way around the field and entering the classroom from the hallway. Bear in mind that these outside doors are almost never used by anyone except for an occasional fire drill. I open the door and step in to see a room full of students facing away from me and towards their teacher. The student closest to me scrambles to click X on her browser, but not before I see full-on, hardcore yaoi hentai. Did I mention I work at a Christian private school? She turns bright red, and with visibly trembling hands, she closes her laptop lid. I burst out laughing, which interrupted the class. The teacher looks to me in questioning confusion, and the students stare in silence. I casually walked over her and said, loudly enough for the classroom to hear, "Let's not look at memes and Facebook jokes at school, guys." Her flush-red face, contorted with fear, suddenly relaxed. Her trembling hands stilled. I laughed again and went and debugged the wireless access point issue I was called down for. No point getting her expelled over hormonal changes and curiosity. Valentine's Day, and a boy brings a girl a dozen roses. They were both in my homeroom, so I watched this all go down right in front of me. I had literally never seen these two have a conversation before either. Girl didn't know what to do with roses at 7 a.m., so she threw the roses in the trash can literally 20 seconds after it happened and went on her merry way. The boy never found out. We had this one kid in our 8th grade class stick his entire hand in a cake that was being passed around for a party, grab a chunk, and started eating it like a Neanderthal. It was chocolate and his face was covered. When he finished his chunk of cake with everyone looking in disgust, he then proceeded to lick every finger. It was torture watching. He also ended up being the kid that threatened to blow up the school at the end of the year. Oh my god. I had a kid carve his own name in his desk, but he couldn't figure out how we caught him. Strange, isn't it? Around the 8th grade dance season, they call it prom, there was a whole lot of cringiness roaming the halls. One popular tactic among the boys was explained to me. We ask the girl to prom, and then we run away so she can't say no. I caught the student on Google search attempting to look me up. He spelled my name wrong, and my name is very common, so I wasn't worried. I sent him home since it was an after-school homework club, and then went through the rest of the history, which included boobs, naked women, Megan Fox nudes, and Megan Fox panties. One of the other students in the class kinda picked up on what was happening and mentioned that he has also been kicked out of the public library for similar reasons. A more innocent story? I was fixing the little girl next door's laptop. She shouldn't have a laptop, and her grandmother doesn't monitor anything she does because she doesn't know computers. I decided to peek in her computer history since she was 7 or 8 at the time. I was curious what kids her age did on the computer. Most of it was super spammy sites, but then I found a collection of how to prank call and what is Miley Cyrus's phone number? I was amused. There was always this kid that would go up to guys, shake their hands, and deeply sniff their necks. One day a teacher asked why he did this to guys, and all he said was, "If I did it to girls, it'd be weird." I once offered a boy a My Little Pony color-by-number sheet. Ran out of Super Mario. The boy's response, "Mister, I'm not gay. I'm a lesbian. I like girls." I mean, to his credit, he's not wrong, but he is incorrect. I was demonstrating convection, which included burning some newspaper. One kid piped up with, that smells like incest." He meant incense. They were too young to get it, but I nearly died trying not to laugh. My husband teaches English at a middle school. He brought some creative writing assignments home to grade, and since I'm an assistant teacher for much younger humans, kindergarten, he drafted me into helping him sort through the mess and grade them. We've made good progress through the stack when I pick up a paper that had a kiss mark near the name in lipstick. Okay, that's odd, but I'm used to working with kids who are only just figuring out bathroom habits. A little lipstick on a report is hardly weird in my book. Plus, middle school. Then I see the name. Hun? Who is R? Husband without missing a beat. R is this goth kid who looks like a rainbow threw up on him after having marathon screwing with a unicorn. I look back at the kiss mark. Glitter lipstick. Nice shade choice if the kid is going for goth pale. I read his creative writing assignment. I get up halfway through to go pour myself some more wine. It's an extremely well-written gay story featuring my husband and another teacher at the school. This kid is going places. I don't know what those places are, but he's going places. I had a student who would constantly butt into people's conversations, and when they asked him to mind his own business, he'd stand up and proclaim, "Nobody likes me! Everyone thinks I'm so annoying! Ha ha!" And he'd laugh while everyone awkwardly stared at him. Another kid literally told me one time that he would just act annoying so that he could impress a certain group of boys. They were not impressed. Well, at least that first kid is honest with himself. I had a 6th grader lick a book. He definitely tried to keep it on the DL, so he looked around, made sure no one was looking in his direction, and then licked the book. It was a tongue poke, then a full-out lick up the spine of the book. I had a classmate who had to give a presentation using PowerPoint, so there's a computer hooked up to a projector that is pointed at the screen that fills the wall. This guy sticks his USB with his presentation in the computer and it automatically loads the images he had on it in a gallery. He had a folder full of pictures of girls from his class he had downloaded from Facebook. That was kinda awkward. My mom is a middle school English teacher. Once, a student snuck a bar of soap into her class, ate it, and proceeded to run out of the classroom and start vomiting. Apparently, he did it to impress his friends. One of the kids responded to questions like Pikachu. Shame that a good kid is going to look back on those days with absolute horror. Not a student in particular, but a whole bunch of them. I was a substitute teacher for a few years on my university breaks, but last January was the worst middle school day I've ever had. 8th grade science class. I asked the kids to open their textbooks and work on the assignment. A girl shyly raises her hand and says, "Miss, there's something inappropriate in my book." Of course, some kid drew a member. I calmly tell her to erase it and move on. 3 more kids say the same thing. I say, "If you have something inappropriate in your book, please just erase it." Every kid starts whining about how there's members in their books. Since they won't shut up about it, I take the offending books and replace them with different books from the back of the room. Every single book had a huge member drawn in it. All 90-something of them. Crudely drawn members, artistic members, Squidward screwing SpongeBob, you name it, it was there. The kids rioted, I almost quit. I taught 4th grade last year, and I had a student who was 12 years old, middle school age, held back a few years. She always did very odd things to try to impress her classmates, but they were relatively tame. Until there was a line in the bathroom and she took her pants off, squatted over the trash can and peed. 4 or 5 girls came running out of the bathroom and told on her. I once confiscated what I first thought was a note being passed in class, but turned out to be a gay fanfic one of my students wrote, pairing 2 of her classmates. Had an 8th grade girl pretend to pass out because she was upset. She got written up for screaming that another girl was a freaking jerk in the middle of a science lesson. Then got upset when that other girl didn't also get in trouble for looking at her wrong. In the dean's office, she was so quote-unquote upset that she pretended to faint, complete with back of the palm to the forehead and dramatic exhale, and then laid on the floor until we were forced to call an ambulance. Before the ambulance came, Mom walked in, she worked right across the street, and said, "Dang it, Jennifer, we're not doing this again." So evidently, this was a regular happening around their house. At this point, the girl squinted her eyes open but refused to actually get up. When the squad got there, they checked her vitals and basically knew she was fine. They had to take her because we can't take chances with this stuff in schools. We all just kind of looked at each other and shrugged. So yeah, that was cringy. I will relay a short story that my 7th grade bio teacher told us. In that class, we dissected a cow eyeball. The year before us, a student pocketed the lens of the eye. Looks like a yellowish hard thing about the size of a peanut M&M. In his next class, he stood up and swallowed it in front of everyone. Another teacher told me about a student he had who would come to school in different costumes, ninja, soldier, etc., and stay in character the whole day. I do not remember the details, but there was an incident in which he threw throwing stars during a talent show. In 6th grade science class, our teacher asked if anyone knew what the arms of an octopus were called, and this kid immediately raised his hand and blurted out, "Testicles!" Everyone was laughing, including the teacher, who also snorted. His face was so red. Kid wore clothes to school with the price tag sticking out. When asked why, I was informed that this was to let everyone know he was wearing new clothes. I thought this was going to end with the kid having stolen them. I work for a private school. At this point, that's really all you have to say. This middle schooler recently started dating another one. The girl decided to come to school in a black leather miniskirt and black leather tank top combo. At recess, which I watched because it's a small school, she was dancing all around in front of her boyfriend and hanging off the fence a la stripper. It was hilarious and so cringy. One student wanted to ask me if I had a doppelganger. What he actually said was, "Do you have a dingleberry?" I also had a girl ask me what food stamps were, which isn't surprising because the district is very affluent. I explained, but she still seemed confused, so she asked what it means to, quote, blow a trucker for food stamps. Evidently, she was reading a book meant for a more mature audience, and her worldly knowledge hadn't caught up to her reading level yet. I organized an activity that was sort of like Never Have I Ever, but positive and meant to build empathy. Basically, a student would say, "You're in my boat if," and whatever they say that is the same as you have to stand up and find another chair. Great activity. One of the girls, who I often found puzzling because she just did and said things that were nonsensical, started her period and got blood all over multiple chairs. Some kids start looking at the seats and have no idea what's going on. The girls in the class figure it out but don't say anything. They just avoid said tainted chairs. The boys, however, are as dumb as a box of rocks and are touching it and sitting in the seats. I'm sitting there horrified since 1, that's disgusting, 2, I didn't initially know who was pulling a carry, and 3, how the heck do I nonchalantly stop the activity to get this biohazard cleaned up and no one really notices? After a short observation of the students, I noticed that the one girl was the unfortunate cause of all this. I told her that she was to do a favor for me, and I stepped outside. I asked her if she knew that she started her period, and she said yes. I sent her to the office and then went back in the room for damage control. I honestly don't know how I concocted a magical excuse, but I told all the kids that we were invited to go to the library for silent reading time, but had to go now because all the good squishy seats would be taken if they didn't hustle. They believed me and I sent them down there. A few girls stayed behind that figured out what happened, and I told them I knew and sent them as well. I finally got on the phone and informed the unfortunate janitor about the bloodbath in my room. "This student spent an entire semester speaking in a Russian accent for an experiment. No one questioned him. First day back from winter break, he is back to talking normal. We were all incredibly confused and his parents ended up going to the superintendent about our school allowing bullying. I teach history and let my students do a PowerPoint presentation on the history of anything. Some kid did the history of furries. He came to class wearing his fursuit. Honestly, kid's got guts. I respect him for that. I teach 8th grade. The student had talked to me previously in private about how the girl he liked was in my class the same period he was. He said that they had almost dated when they were both at their previous school before transferring to the one where I teach. On top of that, all the other students were aware that he had a major crush on this girl. So one day, he finished his classwork early and apparently he just couldn't take the hormones raging inside of him anymore. He blurts out, loud enough for everyone in class to hear, "Look, girl's name, are you gonna date me or what?" I pretend to work through this while cringing so hard on the inside. I see every other student in the room work through this, from shock to laughter to pure amazement and curiosity as to both why he would choose this moment and what on earth her response would be. The girl very politely said, "I'm just not looking for a relationship right now. Thanks for asking, though." Had a kid who legitimately believed he was a Sith, like from Star Wars. His helicopter mom would come flying down to the school crying religious discrimination if you told him otherwise. He would relax his throat and talk in a deep voice and say it was his real voice, but he disguised his voice to not scare his human brethren. On free dress days, he'd wear an all-denim outfit with high waters and denim vest over a denim shirt. I had him for science, so he blurted out things about alchemy from an anime he was into whenever we were working with the periodic table. He also had a girlfriend who lived in Mexico who was also his cousin. Humankind cannot gain anything without first giving something in return. To obtain, something of equal value must be lost. That is alchemy's first law of equivalent exchange. Not a teacher, but in 7th grade biology we dissected rats, and the teacher warned that they might be juicy from preservatives. So I grabbed my dead rat, turned it over in the air, and shouted, "You gotta squeeze the pudding out of it!" My lab mate fainted as brown juices poured onto the table. I am now an adult biologist who does not do quite the same stuff. Scratch their butt with a ruler inside their pants and then put the ruler back into the container of rulers. Not a teacher, but I interned with one recently. Apart from the kid who insisted on being called Frisk, Undertale I guess, but the craze had died down so it was just weird. There was one girl who wore a cat ear headband. Kinda cute since they were the metal silhouette type that kids wear, but she paired it with a freaking cattail. A big, black and white, furry cattail. Not a teacher, but when I was in school, those track pants with snaps down the side were popular. The boys would try to yank the pants off each other during class changes, and they all wore basketball shorts underneath. One day, some guy thought it would be funny to rip off a girl's track pants. However, she didn't have shorts on. Bright purple undies on show, and the look of terror on that boy's face was hilarious. She just ran off, and a friend followed with her pants. Just finished my first year of teaching middle school. I had one particular student who did not view me as an authority and refused to work in my class. This was especially concerning because the student was placed in an advanced class and chose not to learn purely because of who the teacher was. This also meant that the student's classmates were well-behaved, gifted students. One day, while the whole class was completing an assignment, this student was not working. When I addressed the issue, the student threw a fit and started crawling around on the floor underneath the other students' desks. Now, I don't know when you've last been in a middle school classroom, but the floor is absolutely filthy. This student thoroughly embarrassed themselves, as was evident by the looks received from the other students. The whole situation was extremely awkward for everyone, especially when the student realized that they would get no support from the other students. Kid in a fedora offering high fives in the hallway, but then dabbing just before the other person's hand made contact. It was supposed to be a prank for a vlog. I had a couple of Markiplier fangirls a couple of years ago that just gave me the heebie-jeebies. A group of about 20 kids that run up and down the halls shouting about memes. One of which, when asked what he did over the weekend, started with, "So do you know the insert obscure meme?" While making Earth Day posters, one kid tried to disguise pot leaves as palm trees. There were several "I love trees" on it. Earth Day was on 4/22, so he also wrote the first 2 with a swirl at the end, so that it looked like he'd written 420, but it just looked like 4202. I probably should keep a list, but they happen so often that I don't think I'd ever be able to keep up with it. One of my mother's students took a whole pizza in the box out of her office and just started eating. When told to stop and put it back, he licked the rest of the pizza and asked if he could have it. She said no and told him to throw it away. He started arguing that it was better in his stomach than in the trash. My mom was furious. Not a teacher, but I had a classmate on a field trip rub mud all over his clothes and body so he could go home. Turns out his mom's car broke down and she couldn't pick him up. He had to wear his muddy clothes for the rest of the trip. My friend and I got busted on day 1 of 8th grade social studies passing a crude drawing of a classmate of ours getting pleasured by 2 well-endowed men wearing party hats. I didn't think the teacher looked at it until I got summoned to the office during next period. The principal unfolded the drawing and says to us, "Can you boys explain to me what this is?" I knew I was screwed. My friend reaches over the desk and grabs it, holds it close to his face like he's scrutinizing it, and says to the principal, "It looks like a picture of classmate being pleasured with 2 large men, and I think they're wearing party hats." I freaking lost it. My friend got expelled midway through that year for threatening to kill the principal during math class. What is it with these stories and taking such wild turns? I swear! Why can't middle schoolers just be normal for 5 minutes? Not a teacher, but an illiterate girl was doing a presentation on the country of Nigeria. Yeah, I think you guys can guess how she pronounced it. Not a teacher, sorry to be that person. In middle school, my friends and I were not in the popular crowd, but one of my friends had a huge crush on the most popular boy in school, who was also a major jerk. So one day, she brought him a bouquet of flowers and a heart-shaped box of chocolates. She brought the gift to him before school, where he and his crappy friends hung out and asked him to be her boyfriend. I happened to be nearby and witnessed the whole thing. They laughed and laughed at her until she ran away crying. Despite riding the same bus as her, I never saw her again that school year. I saw her that summer since she lived nearby, and she told me she transferred schools because of the incident. Poor girl was brave enough to give it a shot, just to be literally laughed out of the school. I taught 5th grade recorder class as part of general music, so every kid had to play them for quarter. It was freaking awful. 15 to 20 kids, half of whom were budding criminals, playing out of tune on plastic recorders. I was in the middle of chewing them out yet again, when I heard what sounded like a sneeze combined with a squeak. I look over, and the dumpiest, runkiest boy in the class, the gross kid, if you will, had sneezed with this recorder in his mouth and proceeded to blow clear snot through it and onto his fingers. He sat there for like 15 seconds dumbfounded, with that orange clear plastic recorder just hanging out of his mouth. Finally, I told him to just put it on the table. A few minutes later, I accidentally knocked it on the floor, and it broke, justifying my throwing it away after class. I bought a new one at the 99-cent store because I was not giving that stupid thing to anyone else. Not a teacher, but was a student. One of my classmates had a history presentation. He screamed at the top of his lungs, "Leroy Jenkins!" Nobody had any freaking clue what that meant. Everyone was staring at him while he was just smiling, scanning the room, and slowly started to realize no one knew what he said. His smile quickly went away, and he began his presentation. 2 8th grade boys invented their own language which involved anime-like giggling. Funny thing, these 2 were jocks with decent social status. We had so many parent meetings about how their son's giggling was disruptive in class. The parents were mortified, but the boys wouldn't stop. I was showing a movie once, and this girl and boy were sitting in the back next to each other in a table where 2 people could sit. Anyways, by the middle of the movie, I see the kid has his two hands on the table and he is looking away with his eyes wide open while the girl has her hands under the table and is slightly moving. I knew right there and then she was rubbing him. I went discreetly and stood behind them just to confirm, and yes, she was. When I tapped her on the shoulder, I guess it was the adrenaline, he finished, in her hands. The two students in front of them saw everything happen. They were news for about 2 weeks and the entire school knew. They're in high school now and still dating. A rare happy ending for this. I'm a male teacher. I once confiscated a note being passed between 6th grade girls. It turned out it was a list, and they ranked all the boys in the grade in terms of attractiveness. I didn't really look at it, but later I showed it to my team, and they pointed out that my name was number 4 on the list. When I was in middle school, we had this dress as an animal day, and all the other kids did stuff like wear a raccoon hat or cat ears, but I was different. I decided to go in a skin-tight How to Tame Your Dragon costume, and the worst part about it was that the yearbook committee dedicated an entire freaking page to me in that crappy costume. I was a volunteer lifeguard at a middle school gym for part of the year. This school also has a swimming month in the gym classes, where students must wear bathing suits bought or ordered via financial aid at the uniform store. There was a highly overweight girl in one of the classes, and she didn't seem to be aware of the standard issue bathing suits. The gym teacher sent home reminders the week before, but I guess she forgot. This girl was picked on a lot in general and always kept to herself. She was very shy. She never spoke. If you called on her to answer a question in front of the class, she would get teary. On the first day, the other students showed up wearing the uniform bathing suits, but she was wearing her bathing suit from home. It also wasn't a particularly pretty bathing suit, as it looked very old lady-ish and had a bright orange Hawaiian shirt type of pattern. She stuck out, which you could see in her body language really bothered her. The gym teacher ended up calling her out in front of the whole class, giving her a lecture, and giving her a detention for not wearing her uniform, because that was the rule. Her face turned bright red, and she just stood there silently while other kids stared at her and giggled. You could tell that she wanted to cry, and that her soul had just crumbled. The lecture went on for a very long time. This was a gym teacher who didn't like it when the students disobeyed the rules. I was sitting off to the side, wringing my hands and bouncing my knee in secondhand embarrassment. I wish she had just read the reminder. Poor sweet child. Always read the reminders.
What's your top, holy crap, that worked moment? A guy we'll call Bob left the company I was at. A year or two later, he started recruiting people from our company. I was interested, so I flew out for an interview. First 5 interviews went great. Seemed like a good group to work with. The final interview was with the HR director. It went okay, and then we got to the pay part. I said I wanted X amount. She said the average pay for my experience and position was X minus 20K. My response was, Bob didn't fly me out here because I'm average. I have no idea why I said that, but I got the job and the pay I wanted. Months later, when we were getting drinks, Bob brought that up. Apparently, HR director thought I was very quiet and introverted from our interview, so my response caught her even more off guard than it caught me. Used an electric palm sander to clean the soap scum out of my tub. Put a sponge right on the bottom and turned that bad boy on. I thought my tub was just naturally eggshell colored. Nope, it's pure white. I once got fired from a job at the grocery store. I really needed money though, and no other place was hiring. So a week later, I just showed up and started doing my job as usual. No one said anything, and I got my pay at the end of the week like normal, and I stayed at that job until I quit a year later. A very confused patient was fighting me when I was trying to give him IV antibiotics. "You're gonna kill me! What's my family gonna do if you kill me?" He wailed while pointing at his adult son. "If I kill you, they can sue me and the hospital and be rich," I said. The man just kind of made an, "Oh yeah," kind of mumble and let me hook him up to the IV. His son was trying so hard not to laugh. I had a test coming up and needless to say, I didn't want to take it. So 9-year-old me decides to jump out of a tree and fake being hurt. I didn't go to school for the next 2 days. I realize now that I could have just said I fell out of the tree. I didn't actually have to do it. My first edition PS3 stopped working in 2011. It would turn on, but it would never read a disc. About 6 months ago, I randomly found a video on YouTube with like 120 views that was basically a 12-year-old kid showing that if you lift the PS3 vertically when loading a disc, it'll start to read. I tried it and boom, that trick worked. I choose to believe that the child in this video was this commenter's personality from an alternate reality. The 12-year-old was him after he fixed the PS3 in 2011. To get out of an after-hours work event, I came up with the quickest thing I could think of and told my boss that my iguana was sick and I had to get to the pet store to pick up his medication before they closed. I don't have an iguana. The next day, I changed my desktop background to a photo of someone else's iguana. People kept asking me for weeks how my iguana was doing. Had the infamous red rings of death for an old Xbox 360 at one point. Called up a buddy. He told me to turn it off, hold it about 1.5 feet above the floor, and just drop it. I figured that I couldn't make it much worse, so I dropped it. Worked perfectly ever since. My first vehicle was a 1985 Dodge Ram that had about 300,000 miles on it. Needless to say, it wasn't exactly reliable. Anyway, my friend and I had tickets to go see a concert in a city that was about 3 hours away. We made it there just fine and had a blast at the concert. We couldn't afford to stay overnight, so we started on the long journey home. If all went well, we could get home around 3 a.m. There was one stretch of highway where there was 60-ish miles between towns. It's pretty much the worst place to break down on that journey. There were big signs warning travelers to fill up with gas before leaving town, but I had half a tank. My truck sputtered out and died almost halfway between the two towns. It sure sounded like I ran out of gas, but the gauge still showed half a tank. All had not gone well. So there we were, 1:45 a.m., stuck on the side of the highway in Texas, 30 miles from the nearest towns, no moonlight, and this was before teenagers had cell phones. We were screwed. After a bit of poking around with a flashlight, we discovered that we did have fuel, but the fuel pump had died. We decided to sleep in the truck and mess with it in the morning. The fuel pump was inside the engine instead of in the fuel tank, like a modern vehicle. It was powered by the engine instead of an electric motor. Essentially, the fuel pump would constantly pump gasoline when the engine was running, and gas would always be available for the carburetor float valve. The extra pumped gas would just go back into the gas tank. I was just drifting off to sleep when I got an idea. I worked for almost an hour in the pitch dark. I used the same extra hose from an agricultural fertilizer, a drink straw, screw clamps, and duct tape to rig the windshield fluid pump to pump fuel from the fuel line into the carburetor float line. I got in my truck, hit the windshield fluid lever, and the truck started right up. It took a bit of trial and error, but I was able to get the timing down where I knew how often to hit the lever to keep the truck running. We made it back home just after 4:30 a.m. My dad wasn't immediately amused with my handiwork, but he told all of his friends how clever his son was, so I guess it passed the dad test. Please tell me that you didn't keep that same pump in place after you got home. I'm willing to bet a device designed to squirt water isn't going to hold up for long against a more corrosive substance like petrol. Halloween party during college, and everyone is starting to pass out except this very inebriated girl who just won't shut up about wanting someone to turn off the light. I pulled the sleeping bag over her face and said, "Click." She said, "Thank you," and went to sleep. My friend and I looked at each other amazed that it actually worked. Had a laptop slide backward off my lap, hit the floor, and stop working. Showed me an error screen and wouldn't start back up. Decided to turn it over and drop it from the same height onto its opposite side. Why not? It's already broken, right? And it started working again. Have you tried dropping it off and on again? A buddy of mine once did this with his body and a dent in the side of the van, drunk. We asked him how the dent got there and he starts backing up and says, "Well, I was drunk and I stumbled pretty hard and slammed into the van, like this." Long story short, he recreated the drunken fall whilst drunk again and popped the dent right out of the van. As a hardware computer technician, I'm frickin' baffled. This is the kind of fail story we hear way too often. It got dropped twice. How did it get dropped twice? Well, I decided to turn it over and drop it from the same height onto its opposite side, hoping it would fix it. Palm through face. On the flip side, as the great Cade 6 once said, everyone loves a bad idea when it works. I work on costumes in theaters in New York City. About 2 years ago, I was sitting in the front row of a show, and a button popped off one of the costumes. The next day, I took it back to the stage door with my resume, and a little note that said, "This came off one of the costumes yesterday, and I thought you might want it back. And while I have your attention, here is my resume." And that is the story of how I got my first job on a Broadway show. One time, a bird got caught in our chimney, and while me and my roommate discussed how to get it out, he suggested we stick our hand up there, and the bird will just land on our finger. I laughed at him and said it would never work. Within 30 seconds, he was walking to the door with a bird perched on his pointer finger. "Hi, narrator here. Is your flatmate Bernie Sanders or Snow White?" I was hiking with a friend and a mountain lion/cougar/puma crossed our path about 30 yards ahead of us. My friend turned around and went, "Oh crap," and began to run, at which point the cat started running straight at me. I put my hands up in the air and yelled, "Blah!" and it stopped to a skid and ran in the other direction. I have a Verizon Center staff lanyard that a buddy gave to me from some concert 10 or 12 years ago. It literally says nothing but Verizon Center and staff. White letters on a black background, and then has a small barcode and some illegible gibberish on the other side. It could be entirely fake, as I've never seen anyone else use one like it. So far, 3 free concerts and 1 free NBA game. Half afraid to keep using it, especially since the arena changed its name. I can't get anyone else in with it, so while I can literally go anywhere, I have to do it alone, which is much less fun. I once showed up 8 hours late for work. My company was trying out this crazy 3-shift schedule and would change every day, but there was no order to the scheme. If you didn't check what the manager put out that day, no one knew when they should be at work the next day. So after a hard shift, I forgot to check that bad boy. And when I came in the next day expecting to arrive at the shift change, everyone was at their desks working away. Someone sees me and asks, "Hey, did you get moved to this shift?" I picked up a clipboard and said, "No, just here to, inspect." I spent about 10 minutes walking around the office just nodding or scribbling notes before I went home. Not only did I not work that day, one of the managers thought it was awesome that someone was checking up on projects. In college, I had one class where the professor was very disorganized. He was always losing crap and forgetting to grade stuff. It was a small class, so there were only 7 of us, and we decided to do an experiment. On the day of exam, we asked him if he had graded the exam already, and being the disorganized mess that he was, he said yes. So that day, we never took the exam, and a few weeks later, everyone received a 100. His explanation was that he couldn't find the exam papers, but was sure everyone studied hard and did a good job. By the way, we didn't scheme to get out of an exam, and as far as I know, everyone studied. We just thought to do it for laughs, but it ended up working out well. The time I avoided getting in trouble by being really boring. About 6 years ago, I was at my ex-girlfriend's house on a Sunday. Behind her house was a service center for city vehicles. So, since it was a government building, it was closed on Sundays. Behind the main building was a trail that you can walk down for a couple of minutes and get into a subdivision. So me and my ex decided to drive down the head of the trail behind the building and try out the mini bong I had recently purchased. So we pull up and I take the bong out, and I am holding it out the window, pouring a bit of water into it, when I look in the mirror. There is a frickin' cop car 15 feet behind me flying up, and here I am dangling a bong out the window in front of them. I bring the bong back in and throw it under my seat and push a sweater on top of it. The cop car has now pulled up right behind me, and 2 cops are dashing up to the side of the car. "What's going on? You can't be back here. It's trespassing," said the cop on my side of the car. "Oh, hey officer, we were just, going geocaching." "What's that now?" "Geocaching, sir. Here, look." And I take my hiking GPS out of the dash and show it to him. I then go on a 10-minute long spiel about geocaching and what's it all about, and I am super dry about the whole thing. My speech ends and I'm looking at him and he just says, "Okay then. Well, have a nice day." Should I leave, sir? You said this was trespassing after all." Don't worry about it." And both cops get in the car and left. No idea how that worked. It's good to know that if I ever get into trouble with the law, I might be able to get out of it this way. I'll just describe my editing process for this job. Some other comments to this post read, "The police fled for fear of being bored to death. Jeez, trespass or whatever, I don't care. Nerds." Moved offices at work. Tried admin/password on the new router login page. Who has 2 thumbs and higher bandwidth? This guy. In our dorms, the PCs in the rooms had throttled internet, but in the shared labs, they didn't. They told us this was only during certain evening times, but it was patently obvious it was round the clock. I went into the lab, got the Mac from one of the lab PCs, and gave it my Mac. I was on the lab subnet from then on and had much faster internet. I did this for a few friends and told some others about it. Applied for a job at a French fry factory. The online application asked, "What makes you want to work for us?" I simply put, "Potatoes are my favorite food." HR lady and engineering manager loved it. Been working there 10 months now. My friend applied to Bed Bath & Beyond. During the interview, they asked why she wanted to work there. Her response was, "I grasp the concept of beds and baths. It's the beyond that I'm most interested in." She was not hired. Anytime I brought a girl home from the bar in college, because my go-to move was just look around till a girl made eye contact and then nod. Whenever it worked, I was pretty amazed at the results with such a lack of effort. To clarify, it's a nod up, like you're saying, "Hey, what's up?" Also, it works well for any attractiveness, because it helps you understand what level or type of girls are into you, and you avoid the awkwardness of just trying to hit on random girls that may have no interest in you. Good luck to everyone trying to meet someone at a bar. It works surprisingly well. I got my current girlfriend by making eye contact with her across the room and pointing finger guns at her. Didn't know her at all. I'd also like to bring up that she loves my terrible puns, and that's actually how I sealed the deal the next day. Never stop following your dreams. In high school, I told a girl who was way out of my league, "So you should give me your number." She asked, "Why would I do that?" I said, "Because if I just dial randomly, it'll take forever to call you." Waited to be shot down, but she laughed and gave it to me. We were together for 7 years. My son was living nearby and had locked himself out of his room. He called me for help. During my many assignments in the military, I was once stationed with a guy who was also a locksmith, incessantly told me about locks, lockpicks, tumblers, etc. So I showed up at my son's apartment, armed with a basic knowledge about how locks work, and 2 paper clips. I half-straightened them out, used one to flick the tumblers, and the other to pull at the bottom of the lock to turn it. 2 minutes later, I was in. My son says, "Holy crap, you did it!" Got serious dad points for that one. I went to New York City for Fashion Week with the boutique I was working for. After the fashion show we attended, everyone wanted to go out clubbing. Me, being young and new, I didn't want to be the buzzkill. So I went with them even though I was only 18. Arriving at the first club, we were allowed to skip the line because we knew people, and we get to the bouncer. He's going one by one, checking everyone's IDs, and I'm sweating bullets. When he got to me, we just looked at each other. He goes, "ID." And I freeze, and for some reason I said, "Man, I already showed you mine." Until this day, I don't know if he was being nice or just didn't want to look stupid, but he let me in. Needless to say, I got hammered off $18 mixed drinks because F it, right? For about 10 years, I had a wart on the bottom of my foot. A really big, ugly, better not date a dude with a foot obsession kind of wart that was probably about 1.5 centimeters across. I'd tried pretty much everything to get rid of it, short of going for what I was told was the painful cryosurgery to get rid of it. When I'd eventually had enough of having a blob the size of a Volkswagen Beetle on my foot, I decided to book an appointment with my doctor to have it removed surgically. Then I read about duct tape occlusion therapy. The basic idea is you put a patch of duct tape, stick it over a wart, and wait. If the tape falls off, you put another piece on and, well, that's pretty much it. Bollocks, I thought. There's no way that'll do anything. But duct tape is cheap and I'm strongly averse to pain, so I figured, why not give it a try? A couple of weeks later, no verruca. It very much enjoys the pro-science, anti-alternative medicine side of me, but whether it's placebo or not, I can't deny that it worked. So now you can date dudes with a foot obsession. So this thread led me on a merry chase through the internet to check out duct tape occlusion theory and… And here I've been burning off mine with apple cider vinegar like an idiot. Rewind to my junior year of college, and everyone's packed into a living room and boozing heavily in preparation for Super Bowl 49. Literally 10 minutes before kickoff, a half-filled cup of milk gets spilled on top of the cable box, and the picture instantly cuts out. Insanity ensues. One quick-thinking individual, not me, decides to call the cable company and gets through to a customer service rep, and we explain the problem. She just says, "Oh, not a problem, sir. Just let me reset your cable box remotely from here." Within 30 seconds, the pregame turned right back on, and we didn't even miss kickoff. This witch remotely evaporated milk from a cable box. Why was there milk on the cable box if y'all were heavily boozing? Chicago, 2004. At a tech conference and been dancing with this amazingly hot woman at a bar near the events hotel we are all staying at. We get into the elevator after closing time with 8 other dudes, all of whom have been working to get time with her. I'm on the 4th floor of a 30-story hotel. She's somewhere in the high 20s. Door opens at my floor. I say, "This is me," as I'm in the back of the elevator with her. She says, "I'm really thirsty." And I immediately reply, "I have water in my room." Great, let's go. Married for 13 years now, together from that night forward. I woke up the next morning and we decided to spend the rest of our lives mornings together that day. She moved states 3 weeks later, and we wed 4 months after that. 2 kids and a very happy life followed that cheesy line. We have this maths course that's necessary for my major at school. I loathe math and might actually be a little number dyslexic. Dyscalculia for those interested. For this reason, I didn't take the course too seriously, and then, when I had to get my butt into gear, could not understand the end of the course material whatsoever. Fast forward to finals time, and I needed greater than 88% on the exam in this class to pass, and it wasn't going to happen, so I decided to study for my other exams and just retake the course. I decided to at least go to the exam and bullcrap it using Excel. Test was in a proctored lab and Excel was an allowed tool, as well as my limited math knowledge and whatever test-taking skills I had. Guessed on a majority of the questions, muttered the old YOLO, and hit submit. Frickin' 89%. Literally guessed my way to passing a class. May not be the grandest achievement, but I've never had pure laziness and apathy work out like that before. Just goes to show you kids, hard work is for the birds. Not me, but Buzz Aldrin repaired a jammed switch using a ball pen. On the moon. On a switch critical for their takeoff. Not me. Oh, really? I'm not buying it. I think he needs to prove that he isn't, in fact, Buzz Aldrin.
Let's hear the other side. Guys of Reddit, what's the creepiest thing a girl has ever said to you? I remember one time this one girl who was oddly talkative in my options and fixed income class kept talking and asking me about my personal life. Then, when she added me as a Facebook friend, there was a message with it that said, "Found you, smiley face." Pretty uncomfortable. I was talking to a girl on the phone who at the time was messed up on painkillers and started relating to me a story about how when she was 7, she pushed a girl into a pool and watched her drown. Her grandma came home, found out about it, and told her to tell the police it was an accident. That should have been a warning sign right there. I kept some of your hair. 20-year high school reunion. Copied from an email I received from a stalker 7 years ago. When you and her have your baby, rest assured, I'll be the one that raises it. Haha, no! When I was about 17 years old, I worked at a cafeteria and some girls, 11 and 13, were chasing me for weeks. They even waited in front of my door when I had to go to work to chase me all the way up there. One day I was working and the cafeteria was full with people when the 11-year-old girl said, "When can I give you head?" Everyone instantly looked at me. Uncomfortable isn't even the right word to describe my feelings at that moment. Ugh, I thought I had nothing to contribute until you reminded me. Back in middle school when I was maybe 13 or so, I used to go to a pretty large school, roughly grades 5 to 12, all in the same interconnected complex of buildings. That meant there was always a huge number of students milling around the place during lunch break, and since it was a quite large area, you were often surrounded by strangers. Anyway, at one point I heard through the grapevine, which, as a social outcast, was nothing I was terribly familiar with, that this girl a grade or 2 below me liked me. Being socially inept, I just checked if the girl was pretty, noticed she wasn't, and ignored the whole thing. Well, the girl didn't take being ignored for long. She got her cousin, who was more or less the bully of my grade, to pay me a visit with his cronies, pick me, and carry me to go see her one lunch period. They literally half-dragged, half-carried me across the whole school complex to see this girl and held me there while we talked. Imagine your worst early teen conversation where one party is shyly talking to her crush and the other is awkwardly trying to put her off, all while being physically restrained and watched by bullies. I suppose this doesn't really compare to the trauma of being propositioned by an 11-year-old when you're 17, but oh man was it awkward. Sadly, subsequent girls have been far less forward. Making out with the girl I was seeing, lightly slide my hand up her chest, and as my hand is going to caress her neck, she grabs it around her neck and forces me to choke her, which is fine. She then proceeded to call out her brother's name, which I assume was less fine. This happened to a friend of mine I was living with. I won't go into it, but the situation we were in demanded we shared a bunk bed. We had a rule that we could bring girls home so long as we kept the noise down. One night, while sleeping, my friend brings this girl home with him. I woke up to them coming in as they went up to his bunk to start messing around. I hear the typical stuff at first. Lip smacks, heavy breathing, some moaning. Then it happened. I hear the girl whisper to my friend the words, "Are you down with the funk?" In retrospect, my friend says he said yes because the chick was hot and he didn't want to ruin the night. So he says, "Yeah, baby, I'm down with the funk for sure." Almost immediately, the girl takes off her panties, stands up on the bunk, turns around, squats, and takes a dump. Right on his chest. Luckily for him, it wasn't the messy sort, but as you can imagine, the guy lost his crap. No pun intended. He tossed her off the bunk and started screaming for a girl to get the heck out of his house. Meanwhile, I'm on the bottom bunk laughing my butt off. So, not really the creepiest thing a woman's ever said, but now you know what the funk is. This has ruined my perception of funk music forever. I was over at her dorm room, and after we got done with our business, I spotted a bottle of my cologne on her desk. I asked her about it, and she said she sprayed it around to make her room smell like me. Okay. Next week, she gets into my car, makes a big sound, and says, "Oh, smells like you in here." She started rubbing herself. No joke. En route to Kroger. Okay. Few weeks later, at her dorm room, I decide to get a little nosy. I find the following. 1. Aforementioned bottle of cologne. 2. 2 pairs of my dirty undies, not left by me. 3. Pair of my dirty socks, again, not left by me. And this freaked me out more than anything for some reason. Number 4. Envelope with what I can only assume to be, drumroll, my body hair in it. Not okay. I break up with her over ICQ, the good old days. She informs me that she left a bag in my apartment. It's under my bed. In said bag is a bunch of completely random crap with Kmart tags still on it. It was obviously a plant meant to force us to have an awkward post-breakup makeup reunion. Nay, says I. Got my army buddy to drive me over to her dorm in his Ford Festiva. I saw her on the curb waiting, crying. I launched that bag out the window and we took off as fast as that Festiva would go. Never did see if the bag hit her, but given its trajectory, it's highly likely. For those who will want to know, the cologne I was wearing was Old Spice. I was dating a girl called Allison. My grandma is also called Allison. I had mentioned that I found it a little weird that they had the same name, so once as we were screwing, she asked, "Does this make you think of your grandma?" It didn't. Until then. I once went to a ski resort where people of different nationalities were there. A young Chinese girl introduced herself to me the day I was leaving and asked for my number, so I gave it to her. She called me about a week later and asked me if I wanted to go over to her place for a dinner party. I thought to myself, sure, why not? So I turn up with some booze and find about 24 young Chinese girls and no guys. None of the girls spoke any English except the girl who invited me. They sat me down at the end of the table, spoke in Chinese all night while looking in my direction and giggled all the way through. I had no idea what they were saying. At the end of the night, the hostess asked me if I would be so kind to pose for individual photos with each one of them separately. I hesitated, but went along with it. They giggled hysterically throughout, and still only spoke Chinese. No idea what the heck that was all about, but I got seriously creeped out. Edit. No banging involved, those girls were young. I'm a regular guy. Only thing I can think of is they thought maybe I looked like someone famous, though I don't think I do. Okay, some people are making a big thing about the booze thing. In Australia, it's traditional to bring some wine when invited to a dinner party. Also here, the legal drinking age is 18. The girl I met was no younger than 18, I thought, so it was all cool. I was in my mid-20s then, so by young, I meant they were too young for me, though technically it would have been perfectly legal. I'm no predator, I just like girls to be around my age, but not younger by a huge margin. Also, the hostess told me none of them ever drank alcohol, which made me think that they were slightly on the innocent side. Unrelated, but I can't even read half of these because they're so messed up. For example, a girl I hadn't even dated carved my initials into her ankle. She received no wahoo. Had a girl request me to break into her apartment, make her hot chocolate in her kitchen while she's scared in her bedroom, and then come in and bang her. You know this was all just a ruse to get you to make her a hot chocolate, right? I had a girl I once kissed at a party proceed to send me pictures of her crying, half naked, and makeup smeared all over her face Joker style. She won't stop calling me or sending random pictures of herself with distressed or angry face. This has been going on for 3 months now. This is a toss-up between, look at these, before showing me hundreds of bits of paper the girl had written my name on over and over again when we'd been out once, or the time I woke up from a lovely wahoo dream to find my girlfriend gripping my member and asking me over and over again, who do you think I am? Do you want all your stuff back? After we broke up, I had not given her anything. She had stolen it all over time. She had it couriered to me. We then ended up having pillow talk a few months later over email. I found out later that it was her sister mailing. And this stuff she sent back was a photo album entirely filled with pictures of me sleeping. Good times. I had to borrow a girl's computer once for a group project in college. I got to the group meeting and there was a password. I called her and after 10 minutes, she finally gave me the password, which was her first name and my last name. Okay, but low-key, that's kind of sweet.
Your lips looked dry while you were sleeping, so I licked them for you.
Wife and I were in town with our son, visiting my parents when an old high school friend, she was only ever a friend, came by to meet my wife and 2-year-old son. After we all sat and talked for a few hours, and what after felt like a pretty normal night of company, we all got up to say goodnight and the friend hugged my wife goodbye, then turned to me, grasped me very firmly into a hug, kissed me on the lips, then whispered into my ear, "Your son should have been ours. I love you," then turned around like it was totally normal and waved goodbye to us and left. My wife didn't see or hear any of it, and I never told her. She thinks the girl is a decent person and will never see her again. I love you with all of my heart. Let's run away and get married. Not creepy yet? I was 12. She was 42. Not directly to me, but a friend of mine's mom referred to me as a tasty little snack when I was 15. And no, she was not a MILF. Not even close. I went to a football game with this girl. Afterwards, I went to meet her dad, which was already kind of weird. He said to her, "Is this the boy you've been talking about for the past 3 months?" I had known the girl for 4 days. So I did this chick that lived near me, only a few times over a few days. She got really attached to the point of freaky, so I backed off. Within a month, she was at a mental institution. 2 weeks after that, she gets back and happens to be sitting with her mom outside when I got home from work, so I could either ignore her completely or interact. I greeted them nicely and asked how she was, not mentioning where she just was. She stared at me for like a minute straight with the most blank, creepy face I've ever seen, and finally said something. "Are you the one that was controlling my mind?" Nope. I can poop bigger than you can, as she began dropping her pants. To be fair, we were only 3 or 4 years old at the time behind my parents' garage. And though I lost that contest, I married her years later and have since upped my game. I was literally almost inside of this girl and some intimate talk is going on, and she whispers, "You know why I've always liked you?" I asked why, and she said, "You remind me of my dad." I still banged her, but I didn't call her for a while after that. Girl I had slept with 2 times, without knowing her or her friends. We were neighbors. "My friends saw you at Bar X on Saturday. I thought you said you weren't going out." "How did they know it was me? I never met any of your friends." "They've seen pictures." "Pictures of what?" "Of you sleeping." Did anybody else get reminded of that overly attached girlfriend meme from like 12 years ago, or was that just me? In a big group of people. "Could I have some vodka?" "You've had way too much." "I'll give you head for some vodka." "I'm good." "I'll do it anyway." She told me she wanted to be the father of our children. Let that sink in for a bit. This one's a bit of a long one, and it's kind of gross, so just a fair warning. I'm 20. A pretty sort of rock and roll 24-year-old girl asks me out at the spring this past summer. I say yes. We have a decent date. She says she's leaving the next morning for New York City for a month's time. I figured this means she wants purely to use me for Wahoo because she asked me to come over at 12:30 at night and has been out drinking with friends. I say yes. She comes over. We have fun. She was uncoordinated and spoke atrocities while we did this awfully clumsy mushing. The worst I've ever experienced, blame on her behalf. After, I expect her to believe because she's verbalized that she has a flight at 10 a.m., but no, she lingers. For hours. Until well past 5 a.m. I can't bring myself to hint that she should leave, so I go with it. Lying naked next to me, breaking a long silence of hours in which I've fallen asleep, she wakes me and says, "When I was 12 to 15 years old, demons would try and enter my spirit, my soul, late at night while I slept. It wasn't sleep paralysis. I know so." You can imagine the terror as my eyes grew wide and I grew rigid, staring at the ceiling above me in the blackened room. She continues, "They succeeded once, and I became possessed. I couldn't control myself. I started hurting myself and becoming intimately violent. Sometimes, I think they're coming back for me. I want you to hurt me so they can't." I had to kindly show her out after explaining that I was growing much too uncomfortable. The worst part, I wake up the next morning and expect the protection we had used, now lying on the floor, as I pick it up to trash it. Part of why our intimacy felt strange was that there was some texture I felt unfamiliar. Blood. Blood everywhere. It had just been overlooked the night prior due to my bedspread being all black. Man, the blood. So, a girl had a crush on me. One morning when I came home to my place, there was a bag hanging on my front door. I bring it inside and see what's in it. I find a new set of pencils. There was also a spoon that I used to feed babies along with a bottle of baby food. A tiny pink hair clip I'd imagine a 9-year-old girl might wear. A 3-page letter telling me the letter was written by a Polish girl who just moved into town. She called herself Tatiana Dongchert. I think it's Polish, I'm not entirely sure. and she wanted to meet new people in town, so she asked if I wished to bake Doppler cookies with her down by an abandoned warehouse at the docks. Yes, that is what she wrote. Then, as the letter progressed, the text looked more and more as if someone wrote it while driving a bike. At the end of the letter, it was more like random words. Later that same week, someone tried to open my door in the middle of the night. Then, another week passes, and I get a visit at 5 in the morning from some staff from a home nearby where she apparently lived. They told me they found her sleeping in my bushes and that she had run away every night for the last 2 weeks and that she was very ill at the time. They gave me a number to call in case of an emergency. I did not sleep well that following month. Hold on, stop. That's my husband calling. The husband that she said she divorced from who was overseas in Iraq. She wanted me to wait in silence until after the phone call to get right back at it. Stood by the door the whole time, too, to make sure I didn't leave. Nope. Special Cambodian spice. It didn't sound creepy at the time, but I'd asked my wife of 25 years what the unusual black seasoning on the meal she'd just given me was. Turned out, it was a pharmaceutical in the class of beta blockers. By pure luck, I ate only maybe 1/10 the amount present rather than all of it. An hour later, I nearly died. Weak and intermittent heartbeat. A few months before she'd got me to take out life insurance. Beta blockers in more than tiny amounts stop the heart. Looks like a natural heart attack. She's Cambodian, by the way. Yeah, because I was really wondering about the veracity of your statement regarding her status as Cambodian when I'm more concerned about the fact she nearly killed you, dude! My first girlfriend, read-only girlfriend, found me packing my stuff to get the heck out and pulled a sword on me, like a real katana. Said if I packed another freaking thing, she would cut off my head and keep it in a jar. I very carefully explained that I was just moving things, all was well. I hugged the psycho, then left in the dead of night and spent the rest of the night at the train station till I could get the heck out of Dodge. For the next 6 months, she sent me nightly messages on various websites accusing me of being a demon and attacking her while she slept in the dream world, and I should be careful because she was going to fight back with witchcraft. Then, she recruited other crazies, and they were saying the same crap. There was this army of her and a bunch of underage girls, one of which was apparently my then 23-year-old ex-girlfriend's new true love, waging internet war on me for being an evil dream demon and trying to take over the dream world. Since then, yeah, pretty much double rainbow gay. Dudes aren't freaking insane, and when they are, you can tell pretty easily. I found half a bag of toenail clippings in her closet, and when I confronted her about it, she said, "Yeah, I like to save them for later when I want a midnight snack." I got the heck out of there, needless to say. Over at the apartment of some girl I knew from wherever, and basically there to just have wahoo. Just going through the formalities of acting like we're not. She pulls out a photo album. First and ever page, a miscarried baby, dressed up in a bonnet on a silk pillow. I actually found it reassuring that the pictures weren't just thrown in with our other family photos. 4th of July at Uncle Ted's, Labor Day, dead baby, dead baby, dead baby, Thanksgiving, dead baby's first Halloween, Catwoman of course, Christmas after that crazy blizzard on Mount Hood, dead baby, ooh, ski trip. Ex-girlfriend of almost a year, who I thought had moved away, bombarded me at work one day and said, "Look what I did for you. Will you take me back now?" She had the Chinese characters for I love you and my initials tattooed on her arm. I would have to say when a girl I barely knew figured out my class schedule, she would leave me letters in sealed envelopes, giving them to my teachers to give to me. This one time, me and this girl who seemed interesting enough had a conversation. "If you'd have to kill me, how would you do it?" What? Do I really have to answer? "Yes, I need to know." "Well, I'd probably shoot you, something quick and painless." "Aw, why not just stab me into the stomach with a rusty knife?" "Abandon ship! Abandon all hope, ye who enter!" I had a girl open with a necrophilia joke. That's how far she got all night. Just a quick heads up, exploitation of minors in this one. This will probably get buried, but I knew a girl in high school that was pretty sought after. She was small, blonde, busty, and had a killer smile. She loved gaming, anime, sweet tea, boiled peanuts, the whole shebang. I never bothered flirting with her or anything because she just always had so many guys practically tripping over one another to talk to her or sit next to her at lunch. We had computer and geometry class together and sat right next to each other through assigned seating, so we got to talking here and there and had a lot of laughs. We started enjoying it so much that we started writing each other notes back and forth in class, then entire letters throughout the whole day. Then she started inviting me over to stay the night. Her parents were okay with it, and they never came to check on us or anything. I got the impression that I was not the first boy she brought home. So of course we had wahoo, and I lost my virginity that night. Things are going smoothly over the next couple weeks, and she starts stepping it up on the kinky meter. First she admits that she thinks threesomes are interesting. Okay. Then she says she likes furries. Alright. Then that she likes older and younger men. I don't even know what the heck that means, but this girl is letting me sleep with her on a regular basis, so I don't care. Then the letters she starts writing me in class get really graphic. asking questions like what would I do if my dad walked in on us doing it, and if he would join, or if I would come to her house after school and pee on her in her bathtub. At this point, I put a lot of space between us, and a couple days later, she confesses to me that she cheated on me in a threesome with 2 older men. She was really broken up about it, but I saw it as a get-out-of-jail-free card. A year later, she starts dating a friend of mine who was only 15. Keep in mind, she was about 20. I warned him that she was a bit loose in the head, but being 15 and with the busty blonde, he didn't care either. Past time forward again, I go to hang out with them at his house. Turns out she's pregnant and they're hiding it as best they can. Things come to a head when his parents find out. Cops get called. They find pictures of them banging together, which was exploitation of a minor. So they raid her house. They find that her parents are drug dealers and an immense amount of CP on her computer, some that include herself when she was younger. Turns out, her mother used to make the videos of her sleeping with older men and would sell them. Needless to say, she's in jail now and there is an ongoing custody fight. TLDR, lost my virginity to a cheese pizza actress. Got stalked by a crazy. Followed our band around for a while, but I wasn't interested as I had my eye on someone else at the time. I was playing a gig at a pub. She walked in, took off her clothes in front of the stage, took a knife out of her handbag, declared her eternal love while touching herself, and threatened to kill any woman that went near me. I'd never spoken to her or anything else before. The police eventually took her away, but I was reminded of my grandfather's advice at the time. If you're gonna date a woman, date the one that irritates you the least and never, ever date crazy. Good advice, but what if you'd never spoken to her before or shown any interest? The woman had a history of mental issues stemming from a brutal childhood. She was committed to long-term care, and it turned out she had a thing for musicians, as other fellas I knew had the same experience with her at various venues. Stunning-looking woman, but not playing with the full deck at the time. I hope she's got herself sorted out since then. Not to me, but here's the deal. This happened not very long ago to a friend. He tried online dating, and some cute girl messaged him to hang out one night. Verified her, and she looked the real deal. Gets to her place, and she's dressed up to go clubbing with another friend of hers who's on the computer. As he walks in, her friend yells, "Oh my god, I got another one! We're at 6!" My friend raises an eyebrow but hangs out for a bit. They start chatting and drinking, all is good. And then, by surprise, like 4 other guys show up minutes apart. She walks to where they are and says, "We only need 2 more," or something like that. At this point, my friend is freaked out and asks what the heck is going on. Turns out these girls were deciding to invite all the tall guys on the site and then making them compete for their attention in person. Game show type environment. TLDR, some girls on a dating website invite a whole bunch of guys to their place and play "I only want the best, the rest can leave." Now that's creepy.
What's your "what the frickin' frick is this" moment in your dating history? So I've known this guy for almost a year now. Not really good friends or anything, more casual acquaintances. We have a bunch of common friends and see each other from time to time, parties, etc. A couple of months ago, he started messaging me, first on Facebook, then by text. He got my number from a friend of mine, he didn't ask me for it. And most of the time, I responded just to be polite. He's nice enough, but not really my type. So when we started dropping hints about meeting up, I just turned him down and said I'm busy or would just catch up next time there's a gathering with our friends. That sort of thing. Fast forward to last week and he asked me out again, which, if I recall correctly, is the 6th time in the past 2 months. I finally decided to at least give him a chance, cause hey, what could go wrong anyway? And who knows what I'm missing and all that jazz. Worst case scenario, it would be awkward, but we've talked more than a few times, so I was thinking it can't be that bad, and we could actually have a pleasant time. Date night comes, and we meet up in the city after work. We have dinner, nice, cutesy Japanese place, conversation was okay. I was certain at this point that it's really not going to take off, he really isn't my type, but I was having a pleasant enough time and he was a total gentleman and not bad to talk to. The bill comes, and I was going to suggest a quick coffee before heading home. However, he said that there's something he had made an appointment for us for, and we need to rush off and make it in time. I was a bit intrigued and excited. Was it a movie or a show? A play? As he knows I'm into theater. So we hurry off and he took me to a high-end luxury mall with an attached wing for offices. We went up, wait, this is an office lobby. What the? It was a frickin' weight loss center. So he explains that he's part of this company, he works for them part-time basis as a distributor, and he wanted to introduce me to their products, which would revolutionize my lifestyle and make me the healthiest I've been in my entire life. For your information, I'm 5'5" and 135 pounds. I was totally stunned at this point, so I was just nodding like an idiot the whole time we were walking inside. He then left me with his smarmy teammates, who proceeded to give me an orientation about their company and a run-through of their health supplements. When he got to the part where the weight loss products are, the smarmiest one said, "Ooh, now this is what you've been waiting for. I've saved the best for last." I just sat through it because I knew that if I started to say something, I was definitely going to burst and make a spectacle of myself. There was a seminar ongoing and we were at a little table to the side. After I flat out said that I'm not interested in any of the products and frankly don't believe that I need health supplements, I eat well and exercise regularly, they started on the second phase, introducing me to the business aspect of it. Basically, it was a networking model of business where you not only sell the products, you also recruit people to sell them, and they would be under your team, and you get a commission for every sale they make. They rhapsodized about the wonders of the product, how easy it is to sell, and how much money I could be making, because they could tell I have the right kind of personality and network for it. Registration was only $1,000, and it was consumable in products, which I could either use or sell to get my registration money back immediately. I wish I could say I flipped the effing table and screamed at them to F themselves with their health supplements and hope they overdose on their products. But no, right after the talk, I just said I should head home since it was getting a bit late. The guy actually messaged me to say that he had a good time and he hopes to see me again, and that I would consider their products and the business opportunity. I called up some friends and went out for drinks because F your health supplements, that's why. You know, I've been on some bad dates in my life, but none of them were join my pyramid scheme bad. I'll take my dates being into unexpected kinks any day, I suppose. When I was a teenager, I worked at a retail store in the mall, and a guy who worked a few stores down would always come in and talk to me. He was super sweet and genuine and would randomly take me to lunch or bring me coffee and the like. It was just nice to have someone to talk to and who seemed genuinely interested in me and what I had to say. He asked me on a date a few times and I always declined. I don't like the idea of dating someone who I work with or work next to, just in case it goes sour. After a month or two, I finally agreed to go on a date with him, because good guys are hard to find. I couldn't just let him pass by. He picks me up at my house and on our way to dinner we get into a car accident. The driver's side was T-boned pretty badly, and we ended up having to go to the hospital where he contacted his roommate, who then contacted my date's girlfriend. After my freshman year of college, I met a guy on OkCupid, and we went to get dinner at Fridays as our first date. Offered to give me a ride, but I said no. He was a couple of years older, well-dressed, and started talking about how he'd started his own business after college, and it was going well. Good for him. Bragging a bit, but hey, that's an accomplishment. So after we order, he says, "Let's play a game. We'll each take out our wallets and compare what's in them." Wasn't a joke, literally just started showing me his credit cards and bragging about the high limits, ending with a, "Clearly, you can't afford to pay for this dinner, but don't worry, I could cover you." I was annoyed and protested, but he wouldn't take no for an answer. So as we leave, he says he wants to show me his car. Unfortunately, it was before mine in the lot, so I had to walk by. It was a white, windowless serial killer van. He begged me to bang him in it, right there in the Fridays parking lot. I was pretty glad I drove separately. A guy I met 3 days previously offered to pick me up and hang out. I was cool with that, but he ended up dragging me around on errands. We went to his dentist appointment, and then when I said I wanted to leave, he said he'd give me a ride home, but only in exchange for oral fun times. I was pretty scared about dating after that. And no, I did not take him up on his offer. I got out right there and walked to a bus stop. I went on a date with a guy that I met online. He told me to dress nice and that he was going to take me out for dinner. He took me to Subway, ordered a foot-long teriyaki chicken sub, looked at me and said, "I hope you like teriyaki chicken." We shared the sub in his car. Safe to say, there was no second date. Narrator here, so you're telling me my main dating strategy is wrong? Went to pick up a girl at her house after meeting on a dating website. She seemed significantly larger than her photo, but only in the lower abdominal region. This is when I realized that she had failed to mention that she was pregnant. Guy I worked with kept asking me out. I continuously said no. After about a year, I started to feel bad for the guy and said yes to a date. He asked me to lunch, so I figured it could be a quick, easy date. He picked me up and took me to Wendy's, where he made me order off the dollar menu, and I could only get 2 things. After this very quiet lunch where he hunkered over his chicken nuggets like I would steal them, He said he needed to stop at Walmart. We go in and he heads to the lotion section. Strange, but whatevs. He then grabs 2 scented lotions and asks which one I like better. Being nice, I pick one, and he responds with, "Great, I'll use this for your massage." Luckily, I had to work in 2 hours and told him the massage would have to wait. I spent 3 months trying to avoid him until he quit. Well, I had this major crush on this girl. She was gothish, which isn't my thing normally, but this woman was extremely intelligent and cool. So the first date is good, we have a good time, we're both drunk, and we go back to my place. Mind you, she's very open with her sexuality, so things get hot and heavy. Right when the action is going to start, she says, "I don't actually want to do this." Imagine a semi-truck slamming on its brakes. "Okay," I say, "that's fine. We just sleep off our drink." This exact same thing happens a second time, and I'm starting to get annoyed, only because it's painfully obvious that our mutual actions during the date are leading to adult fun times. Finally, it happens a third time, and I decide I'm over this girl. About a year later, I find out from her friend that she was hoping I would act out an unspeakable act. She wants me to be like, "Screw that, we're doing this." I pointed out that this would in fact constitute an actual unspeakable act, not acting one out. I then found out she had herpes, so in the end, me for the win. On my first date with a guy off an internet dating site, he took us to the Scientology Museum in London. I thought, original, easy to find things to talk about, laugh at the craziness of this, it could be fun. He then proceeds to read every single piece of writing on every single exhibit, ask the attendant very probing questions about how one goes about joining Scientology, etc., and sounding slightly too interested to just be intrigued about religion. Also, he was visibly sweating. Once we were done there, we went for a glass of wine, and he told me he used to shoot heroin. I was out of there like a shot. In college, this guy from one of my classes asked me to go out with him out of the blue. We'd never even talked before, but he was pretty cute, so I said sure. We exchanged numbers and he said he'd call me with details. He called the next day and told me we were going to a restaurant that was way out of my price range. We're talking like, no way this bill will be under $100. I tried talking him out of it, and when that didn't work, flat out saying I couldn't afford something like that. But he insists and tells me not to worry. This all really should have been a clue to me. So I say fine and we agree to go. We get to the restaurant and waiter comes over and I go to order, the cheapest thing on the menu, when he stops me and says, "Ignore her, we're both having the steak." But I don't like steak. "She's just saying that because she's poor, we'll have steak," and shoos the waiter away. I'm mortified and angry and want to leave, but he was my ride. He tries to make conversation and just proves to me that he really is a butt. He then says that he has to go to the bathroom and leaves. I'm sitting there for a good 10 minutes before he texts me, "Ha ha ha, I got the squirts from drinking last night, don't eat without me." And that was the last straw. I call the waiter over, pay for my meal, and go to the Starbucks down the street to call my friend to pick me up. In summary, guy was trying to impress me and was the world's biggest butt. Just to clear some things up, I paid for just my meal, not his, and I'm well aware I didn't owe him anything. I just wanted to make a clean break from this guy. I know for a fact that bad dates are not a gender-exclusive experience, but I can't help noticing that the girls seem to have a disproportionate number of horror stories in this thread. Funny that. I went on a few dates with a guy in college. At first I was excited because I found him attractive and he said yes to a dinner date. Turns out even attractive people can be a bag of crazy. First we go out to an Italian restaurant. He orders spaghetti with regular sauce, no meatballs. Out of curiosity, I ask if he's tried anything else on the menu he could recommend. "Nope, I only ever order spaghetti." Food comes and he proceeds to lean over his plate, shovel the spaghetti in his mouth and use his lips to cut the rest back on his plate. I'm no snob. I've eaten spaghetti like that before. Just never in public. He says it's the right way to eat it. He asks if I'd like to go see a movie. I'm not feeling the vibe, so I decline, make up some project I need to finish. He tells me he loves the movies, wishes he could just live in one all the time. Alright, well, thanks for the date. A week later, he asks me out again. I decide to give him another shot. Maybe I was being overly judgmental or petty. We agree to go out for a pizza and see a movie. I pick him up at his house and we go to Pizza Hut at his insistence. Best pizza on the planet, he tells me about 3 times on the way there. We get there and he orders a personal pan for himself. That was a first. Okay, he didn't want to share the bill maybe. I order one for myself and just let it go. Again, worrying maybe I'm being judgy. Bill comes and he pays, so now I'm really confused, but whatever. I'm not going to call him out, not worth it. Movie ended up being back at his house where, surprise, he lives with his parents. His dad asks me what I'm in school for, and when I tell him, he lectures me that I should go to school for teaching, since that's what he does. Okay, nice meeting you. We never did watch the movie, spent the rest of the evening with him showing me all his WWF wrestling memorabilia and bossing his mother around Cartman style. His life goal was to get his old job at Blockbuster back, since it was the most fun he'd ever have. His favorite way to spend Christmas was when his mum let him open everything the night before, so he could spend the day at the movies, avoiding all the relatives that come over for Christmas dinner. He hated everything his mother cooked, and counted off to me the only 10 foods he would ever eat, hated everything else, and didn't even need to try it. Did I mention he was 27 years old? A few days later, he invites me out to coffee, and I agree so I can tell him I won't be going on any more dates with him. He was nice enough, and even though he was an oddball, we never got each other to laugh. All our conversations were dry, no shared interests, and he didn't have the same values on the importance of family, so this wasn't going to work. We meet up and he orders a meal while I get my coffee. I tell him that I enjoyed our dates, but I won't be seeing him again. He yells, "So you're breaking up with me?" No, we're not anything official. "I can't believe you're dumping me!" And he storms out, leaving his food behind half-eaten. I sit there for a few minutes kind of stunned, slightly amused, but okay, life goes on. A few weeks go by and now it's the holidays. I run into him again and this time we do hit it off. He seems to laugh easier, tells a good joke, etc. He asks what I'm doing for New Year's and I invite him to the party I was going to. I figure, hey, maybe we can at least be friends. I tell him about the other girls that will be there and he seems to get the hint that we aren't going as a couple. We get to the party and he loudly declares that he doesn't drink. That's fine, no one reacts, no biggie. He sits in the corner refusing to acknowledge anyone. He seems upset for some reason, so I ask him what's wrong. He's upset because the movie trivia we were playing earlier had a mistake in it. Alright, we'll get the info off the box and write to them. He seems to cheer up after this. Later he sneaks into the kitchen and begins to prepare himself a mixed drink by pouring a little of everything into a glass. He doesn't notice me and he's talking to himself going, "Yeah, a little of this, ooh, maybe some of that," and he takes a sip of his rum, cranberry, Malibu, Dr. Pepper, orange juice, mint schnapps with a splash of tap water, and pours the rest down the drain. I don't think he wanted to admit that he didn't know how alcohol worked. On the drive home the next morning, he pretended to have a hangover and didn't talk much. I'm driving and the roads are icy, so I'm not minding the silence. About 30 minutes left in the trip, and he asks me what I want to do with my college degree. I tell him my plans and stuff I'm excited to do. He then says, "I don't see the point of you wasting your time getting a degree. You'll just be spending the rest of your life raising my children and cooking me meals that I like." It took all I had not to dump him off right there on the freeway. He continues to say demeaning nonsense about our future, how he'll convince me to drop out of college, how pointless it is for all women to get degrees, blah, blah, blah. My ears begin ringing with rage. I've never had someone say anything so outrightly unsupportive or sexist like that to my face. I knew he had some strange social issues, maybe some anxiety about trying new things, but this was too much. I calmly told him I was not going to be told my lot in life is to raise his babies on his part-time Blockbuster paycheck. I didn't say another word to him, just dropped him off at his car and drove off. I did learn never to feel obligated to put up with someone's bullcrap. I kept giving him chances when I shouldn't have. But in the end, I think I needed to learn that lesson. Now I'm really careful about not leading men on, especially if they have poor social skills. There's been a few, but the absolute worst was the woman who turned up to the pub with literally no money, expecting me to buy her drinks and dinner. I wouldn't have minded if she had told me beforehand, but this was completely out of the blue. So anyway, we sat there making awkward conversation, or at least I tried to start a conversation, told her about my life, asked her questions. She was too busy texting and phoning her friends to really take notice. So eventually we did get talking, then out of nowhere she told me that she killed her dog. Not accidentally either. I just upped and left and avoided all contact. That was 2 years ago. Ah, the Irish goodbye, effective for parties, conversations with your racist grandparents, and antisocial dates who have killed and, for all we know, eaten their dogs. There are some worthwhile theories about this lady in the comments. She just wanted a free meal but didn't want a date. Jenny, how do I get out of this date? Tell him you killed your dog, lol. With dating, you have to avoid people who are just hungry. I had just gotten into college and was single, so I couldn't wait to meet some girls there. I sat next to a really cool girl in German class, very outdoorsy, went camping a lot, which is awesome. I do too. On the last night of a project we were working on together, I gathered the nerve to ask her out, and she quickly said, "Sure." I picked her up the next night, and we go to dinner. Everything is going great, had some good small talk, laughed quite a bit. Then the food arrives. She immediately pulls out a Bible from her purse and says we should recite a passage before eating. I'm an atheist, but I don't really mind if a person is religious. I refuse to judge anyone on that basis alone. So we recite a verse, thank the Lord for our meal, etc. As soon as I start eating, the first question she asks is, "Have you found a good church around here? I've been to a couple, but I don't really like them." I froze like a deer in the headlights. I've never been to church in my entire life, so I have no clue as to what she would think is a good church. After contemplating what to say for a second, I decide to just tell her I'm an atheist. I mean, heck, I don't care that she's religious and said a Bible verse or prayer before the meal, so maybe she won't care that I'm an atheist, right? Not even close. She gives me this weird, evil, astonished look, immediately grabs her Bible, flips through it for a second, and starts quoting a passage about sinners going to hell. I knew I should have gotten up and left right away, but I have an entire steak I just paid $25 for sitting in front of me. I hurry up and down the steak, potatoes, and vegetables in about 10 minutes. During these 10 minutes, she's still reciting passages, talking about how I'm going to hell. I just nodded and continued inhaling my food. Pulled out a piece of paper with about 5 cab companies' phone numbers on it, grabbed about $75, threw it on the table. The only thing I said to her was, "That should be plenty of money to pay for dinner and get you a cab home." The next day, she texted me and sort of apologized. By sort of, I mean the text read something like, "I didn't mean to offend you, but you need to recant your sins or spend eternity in hell." Next day, I'm off to German class, wondering what may happen when I see her. Oddly enough, she wasn't there. Next day comes and not there again. I asked the professor if she had received word as to why she hadn't shown up, and the teacher told me that she had dropped the class the day before. That was a relief. Now fast forward 4 years, and I'm a senior at a random bar near campus. And guess who is there drunk out of her mind? Yep, it's the good old religious girl. I try to stay away from her, but she spots me, runs up to me, and hugs me, which I find very strange. I don't hold grudges, so I hug her back. She buys me a drink I didn't ask for, but I accept because I'm fairly broke. She damn near demands I drink it with her, so whatever, I'll do it. I try to be a nice guy from time to time. Not more than 10 minutes later, she says, "We should go back to my place and hang out," while rubbing her hand up my thigh. I turn around, point to my girlfriend and say, "See her? That's my girlfriend, and she has never cared that I'm an atheist. Thanks for the drink." Walked away and never saw her again. In summary, religious girl claims I'm going to hell for being an atheist on our first date. 4 years later, she's drunk at a bar trying to take me home with her for adult fun times.
Make-A-Wish recipients and workers, what were some wishes you had to say no to? Make-A-Wish wish granter here, and I have to say it is the ultimate sadness when we have to stop the process because a non-custodial parent won't sign the paperwork. It's happened far too often. Usually the wishes we had to say no to were from the kids' family members. There was always some uncle, grandma, cousin, sibling, or parent who wanted to hijack the kid's wish. A classmate of mine, now passed, got a meet and greet with Sammy Sosa. The understanding from the Make-A-Wish people was that Sammy would sign autographs and sit with the family for a while. Now, this kid was all about Sammy. He had his jerseys, loved Sammy's little leaps after home runs, and if I recall correctly, even was big into Pepsi because of Sammy too. When the day came, Sammy showed up late. He didn't respond when the family greeted him. It was described as a sullen silence, signed a glove, and then walked away. My classmates started crying once it was clear Sammy was not going to come back. Right when the parents were about to leave, another baseball player named Corey Patterson saw my classmate, came up, signed everything they had, and talked and joked around with the family for over a half hour. Corey became my classmate's favorite player that day, and I think he lived perhaps a year after that moment. At his funeral, my classmate's picture with Corey was one of the prominent pictures. That moment and day truly, truly meant the world to him. He was around 10 to 11, if I recall correctly. To this day, I'm unsure if someone from Make-A-Wish found Corey or if the moment was as spontaneous as it was described to me, but no matter what, Corey will always have a special place in my heart because of that story. I, of course, was not there, and I'm not a primary source for Sammy's interactions with my classmate, but I know and trust the family. One thing that a couple of Anons have pointed out that I think is worth mentioning is that it seems unlikely that Make-A-Wish would organize a meet and greet with Sammy Sosa, gently suggesting I was misremembering the context. The Anons argued that it's more likely their meet and greet would be with the Cubs team as a whole, and that this changes the context of Sammy's actions if the meet and greet wasn't directly with him. What I do remember is that this story really rocked our tight-knit community, but made us that much more appreciative of Corey Patterson. My little brother has had 2 heart transplants so far, and will probably get another one before it's all said and done. His wish was to go to Nintendo. Well, Nintendo Japan doesn't grant wishes, but Nintendo of America does. He stayed in Seattle for a few days and had a day-long tour of Nintendo. Unfortunately, Reggie wasn't in the office that day, but the Treehouse staff led him around all day. This was right before the Switch came out, so we got to play Breath of the Wild before anyone. They gave him a sweet goodie bag and let him go on a shopping spree in the employee store. I received a wish when I was 15. At the time, I was madly in love with Harry Styles and of course wanted to use my wish to meet him and spend the day with him. After telling the wish coordinator this, she broke the news to me that if I were to meet him, it will be a year from then, with about 15 other kids for a very brief moment, a hello and a photo. Upon hearing that disappointing news, I changed my wish and instead went to Australia for 10 days with my family and swam in the Great Barrier Reef. Just for some background, both my sister and I are pretty dang sick, and so we had the rare occasion where we both got wishes. My family suggested that we just do one, but Make-A-Wish was adamant that we each got our own. My sister's Make-A-Wish was to meet Taylor Swift. We flew to Nebraska for 2 days, got in the same meet and greet line as people who won radio contests, took a picture with Taylor Swift, and that was that. I, on the other hand, asked to meet Christopher Nolan. He had never been requested for a wish, so we were flown to LA where we got a tour of the Warner Brothers lot and then had a private lunch with Nolan and Emma Thomas, his wife. We hung out for 2 hours where they finally left because they had some film-related thing to do. We found out later that he'd only agreed to an hour, but during the lunch insisted that he stayed longer. It was quite interesting how we both had celebrity wishes and they both turned out so differently. I asked for a shotgun because I was into clay shooting. They said no. Went for a rally driving day. They picked my family and I up in a limo. Drove us 2 hours to the place, and then I had the whole place to myself and lots of time behind the wheel. It was great. They paid for pro pictures and a meal after for my family and my godparents' family. Even just gave me some spending money. I had a great time. 10 years later, still alive. And hopefully have that shotgun? This isn't my personal story, but one of my uncle who passed away shortly after I was born. He loved the Terminator so much that he wanted nothing more than to meet Arnold Schwarzenegger. Due to having a busy schedule, Arnold's agent had to deny him of his wish a couple of times, was filming for the second Terminator. My uncle was so determined to meet Arnold that he then changed his wish to meeting Maria Shriver, Arnold's wife. Because of his determination, he was allowed on set of Terminator 2 Judgment Day. He got to meet Arnold, Maria, and Arnold's stunt double. My mom still has the pictures and it makes my heart soar. Make-A-Wish is fantastic and I'm so glad my uncle got to live out his dream. My condition prevented international travel, so even though my top wishes were to go to Japan or to the UK to meet J.K. Rowling, those were denied. I ended up doing a shopping spree at Mall of America, which sounds kind of lame, but I grew up poor and had a lot of fun being able to just buy things for myself without worrying. First thing I bought was a new pair of glasses, since my old ones were scratched to crap and too weak anyway. When I was in college, I had a good friend named John. We were both in automotive 8 hours a day for 2 years. One day, we grabbed sushi on lunch, and he casually mentioned at 12 years old, current age 20, he was a recipient of Make-A-Wish. He asked for sushi and just sushi. You could see his eyes light up just telling the story. They set him up with a private lunch at a local sushi bar where he had the entire selection of sushi rolls laid out in front of him with each and every possible condiment, roll, and side. Not an expensive or grandeur request, but Make-A-Wish went above and beyond. I've been the recipient, and later on after my health improved, I volunteered as a wish coordinator. My original wish was to attend the Oscars. That got denied by the Academy as they do not grant wishes. I wound up going to the People's Choice Awards as a VIP. Make-A-Wish flew my family to LA for a week, all expenses paid. They got us a limo for the show, paid for my dress, hair, and makeup, we walked the red carpet, and were seated very close to the stage. It was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. The generosity of the volunteers is remarkable. They even had someone greet us at the airport on arrival. It was extremely important to me that my brother and sister were included in my wish because my illness had robbed them of part of their childhoods. I am forever indebted to everyone who made my wish possible. When I turned 18, I decided to volunteer as a wish coordinator to give back to an organization that did so much for me. I met with wish kids and their families. We would always arrive with a gift for all of the children of the family based on a little survey they filled out. We'd talk with the child and help define their wish. It's important to determine the child's true wish and make sure that it isn't influenced by parents. The most common wish is to go to Disney. Celebrity meet and greets are the ones that often can be turned down. First, because it's undefined what a meet and greet is. It could be the child literally waving at someone and no one wants that. And second, because not all celebrities grant wishes or can schedule time to meet wish kids. The coolest wish I worked on was a shopping spree for a boy who was confined to his room. He got $7,000 to go buy video games, TVs, a tricked out lazy boy, etc. for the ultimate gaming setup. I worked with a guy who was a Make-A-Wish kid, and he said he wished for a puppy and was denied. It makes sense that they're not going to give live animals to a little kid. Well, it's between that and the shotgun. When I was a baby until I was 5, I had cancer and got some wishes. My first wish was for a computer. I only wanted a computer because it came with a mouse. Yes, I thought it came with a real mouse. So, obviously it was rejected because you can't have pets when you basically live in a hospital and my family is broke anyway, so they couldn't give us a pet. I ended up getting some dope googly eye glasses and an epic trip to Disney World. It was the only family vacation we ever got to go on. I didn't know the kid at all, but he died from cancer his senior year of high school when I was a sophomore. We had an assembly for him. His name was Tyler. His wish was a gift to his best friend. Tyler went to a computer store with his friend and asked him to show him the best computer there. Then Tyler bought the best computer there for his friend using Make-A-Wish donation money, only to die a little later. Such a selfless guy. Tyler met Imagine Dragons 3 years before his death and they became friends. Imagine Dragons dedicated It's Time to Tyler. Whenever I hear that song, I think of this. It chokes me up every time. I worked for Make-A-Wish, Junior Genie as I like to say. We had to say no to wishes all the time. Either the person the kid wanted to meet didn't grant wishes, the place they wanted to go to didn't grant wishes, their wish was ridiculously expensive or prohibitive, their doctor didn't sign off on the wish as it wasn't a good idea for their health, and so on. For the most part, our volunteers were pretty good at helping kids zero in on that perfect wish. I've helped coordinate some wishes that I was surprised to see were approved. Usually it's trips to far distances with a lot of stops and long stays. It's one thing to go to Japan. It's another to go to Japan for 2 weeks. It's another to go to Japan for 2 weeks and go to 10 different attractions. Not all of them give us free tickets. Many don't even give discounts. Most kids had cookie-cutter wishes. Disney World, Paris, Meet the President, etc. Those were my bread and butter. I hate to call them cookie-cutter because I know it's such a precious memory for the kid and their family. Working there was a precious memory for me too. And I enjoyed coordinating everyone's trips. Unusual, frequent, high medical needs, lots of family, what have you. It was such an amazing thing to be a part of. I knew a friend who had cancer and overcame it, and he talked about Make-A-Wish. If it's not accepted, you apparently get a first-class trip to Disney World most people can't afford. He said he went to Disney World because he wanted to meet a skater that was in Europe on some tour. I was really lucky to have my Make-A-Wish granted, and I just want to say they really go above and beyond. My mom has always talked about going to Hawaii, and we knew it was pretty unrealistic for a family of 4. I was pretty young when I made my wish, so I didn't even know all that Hawaii had to offer, but I chose to go there for my wish. They put us up in a penthouse suite on Waikiki Beach, and I've never experienced anything more special in my life. Everything and everyone there wanted to make sure my family had an unforgettable time, and we sure did. We were able to forget about the cancer for a little while and feel like a normal family again. Thank you so much to Make-A-Wish and all that contribute. I have experience with Make-A-Wish in the last year due to my son's condition. This was a question I asked, and the response I was given was they will do anything they can within reason. One kid wanted a swimming pool in his backyard, and they did that. Because of how the process goes with Make-A-Wish, they ask the kid a lot of questions to determine what the child wants and to ensure there isn't any influence from the parents. My wife and I sat with my son while they asked him a lot of questions over about a 1-hour period to determine what he wanted to do. They asked my wife and I to sit there silently while he answered honestly. We are going to go to Legoland and meet Darth Vader sometime in 2019. I was a Make-A-Wish kid around 20 years ago. I was 5. I asked to be turned into a dinosaur. They said no. 0 out of 10, worst organization, they hate kids, boo. A couple of years ago, I went to Disney at Orlando, and there was a little boy running around wearing a shirt that said, "I'm a Make-A-Wish kid." My friend had to comfort me when I cried because the toddler's mom and aunt told the pretzel vendor his Make-A-Wish was originally "Make Mommy Happy." I got genuinely emotional reading that, and I'm so glad I'm not crying on mic right now. The moment I met with the workers, I asked to go to the moon, but was turned down. Tried to compromise with space in general, ended up going to Italy. Not as cool. One of my nieces is a Make-A-Wish recipient. She had stage 4 rhabdomyosarcoma. They flew her, her sisters, her dad, and her grandma to Disney World, and they had the time of their lives. She's 6 years cancer-free and still talks about how grateful she was for that trip. She's just turned 14, and her younger sister talks about how it was her only plane ride ever. That organization is amazing and will forever have all of our support. I would like to add that the Ronald McDonald House Charities is another amazing organization that put my family up for housing in Manhattan during her treatment, over 2 years in the hospital at a minimal cost. Before that, we were driving 3 hours each way every time she needed chemo. Also, shout out to the Sloan Kettering Oncology Ward for taking care of her and making her feel like a kid while she was going through treatment. I think we all know by now the comedian who had a kid request he show up to the child's funeral dressed as a giant member. Kid made it through his illness. The comedian is named Russell Howard, and I gotta say, laughter is the best medicine. My son chose a Disney cruise. He didn't even hesitate in his pick. Probably because we were on day one of a Disney cruise we had been planning for over a year when he took a small tumble in our stateroom and wound up breaking his femur. Because, unbeknownst to us, his leg was filled with Ewing sarcoma. This trip he had been looking forward to for so long was destroyed before it even really started. So when it was wish time, he asked for a redo of our cruise. We waited until he had been off of chemo for a couple of months, and we had a wonderful time. We even added days on at Disney World from our DVC timeshare after the cruise. Both the Make-A-Wish folks and the Disney cruise employees told my son to make sure he wore his Make-A-Wish shirt to the parks when we were there. He did one of the days, and even though that wasn't part of his wish, the Disney cast members all treated him great. It was so nice to see him have such a wonderful trip after a ruined dream vacation and a year of non-stop hospital stays. By the way, he is doing great now. He hit 2 years off chemo this past September. I got a wish as a kid, then survived. The biggest, best thing I could think of was to go to Chuck E. Cheese's. I have no idea why I was fixated on that. To the credit of some good peeps, to Chuck E. Cheese's I went. I couldn't be around other people, so they opened it up at night. People deep cleaned it, sterilizing each ball in the ball pit. There was dedication there. Then someone who was cleared medically worked it. Don't remember most of it, was pretty young, mostly just remember the bits I found exciting, but that dang rat casino still makes me smile whenever I see one. Moral of the story, never bet against Make-A-Wish when dealing with logistics. Every ball in pit. Kid I know got cancer in elementary school. He was always into history and US presidents, so we asked to meet him. They flew his whole family out to DC to meet George W. Bush. Also, he actually spent more time with them than was allotted in his daily planner according to the dad. The kid beat cancer and is still doing okay. Not a recipient, but worked at a Hard Rock Cafe. A wish kid's wish was to see Paul McCartney live, so they came in to eat dinner before his concert down the road from the restaurant. We sat him next to some signed Beatles guitars and sheets of lyrics and the such. As an avid Beatles fan myself, I was able to serve them. I sat and talked with that 6-year-old about the Beatles for a good hour, played all the Beatles songs, and had their music videos playing on the TVs throughout the restaurant. It was super humbling with how excited this kid was to go see Paul, and just be able to be outside the hospital for the night. And also super heartbreaking seeing his dad's face the whole dinner. I'd never seen such pain, and I think about him frequently. I'm from Minnesota. When I had leukemia 30 years ago, I remember my wish was to go to the Grand Canyon. My parents straight up vetoed me. And instead the family, 2 sisters, went to Disney World and other Orlando attractions through the Give Kids the World program. It was the right decision, but still. Was it the right decision? Because it sounds to me like Disney World is full of more Make-A-Wish kids than actual people. Also, the Make-A-Wish Foundation should have let you have your wish in spite of your parents. That's the whole reason they have those conversations with you. I got offered a Make-A-Wish when I was 5 years old because I had leukemia. My parents declined their offer because my survival rate was very, very likely, and they wanted another kid who was less likely to survive have it. After I was cured, they took me and my twin brother to Disneyland to celebrate using their own money. My parents are wonderful people. In this thread, wish denied, went to Disney. My son was a Make-A-Wish recipient. He wanted to go to Europe. They were planning it, and his piece of crap birth father wouldn't allow my kids to get passports. Great father, huh? Son had like 36% chance of survival from brain cancer, and he said no passports. Anyways, his second wish was an RV trip to the Badlands, Yellowstone, and the Rockies. They got us the biggest bus type, think it's A-class, RV they could get. Set everything up for us, gave us itineraries, and off we went. It's such an incredible organization, and luckily, my son had a blast after finally having the okay to go. He's also in remission and doing well, thank God. Make-A-Wish is incredible. Fun fact, the amount of kids that wish to go to Disney World is so large that Disney built its own resort for them called Give Kids the World, where only families from Make-A-Wish can stay. They have special buses to transport them, doctors are always on staff, and there's special games and activities at the resort for kids who can't make it to the park that day. I adore Make-A-Wish and everything it's done for kids. It helped send my friend to the Bahamas when she was sick, and she said it was one of the best experiences of her life. It was mentioned several times below, but Give Kids the World was actually made by Henry Landworth, a Holocaust survivor. My daughter was granted a wish. She really wanted to meet Taylor Swift and see her in concert, but Taylor was not touring at the time, so we, her parents, kiboshed that wish. She was not healthy enough to enjoy a long concert, and I didn't want her to postpone her wish since we weren't sure if or how long she might live. In the end, she chose to go to the SeaWorld Resort in Florida and swim with the dolphins. She ended up being scared to death of them and refused to even go in the water. Make-A-Wish sent us to Universal while we were there too, and she had fun. That was 6 years ago, and she is now in remission. We took her to a Taylor Swift concert this last summer, and I think she enjoyed it way more than she would have 6 years ago. So when I was 15, I got to make a wish. My uncle really pushed to ask to meet Tiger Woods and play golf with him. I wasn't into that. Neither were my cervical tumors. I was getting better, and I knew I was going to be okay. I told the wish peeps that I wanted to bow out, but they were pushy. Right in front of my mom, I said I wanted to hit a blunt with Snoop Dogg and wouldn't accept any other wish. That got shut down. I'm fine and 34 now. We did the standard Disney World trip. My son only had months to live, and we had a small window when he was well enough to go. Bruce was 5, so he didn't really have any big or creative ideas. He'd only been to Disney World once for a single day, and my husband wasn't able to come. He told the wish grantees that he wanted to show Daddy the giant castle and ride roller coasters with no lines. Even though it seemed like the cookie-cutter wish, my son's Make-A-Wish experience was truly amazing. I still cry thinking about how much that trio meant to him and our entire family. My son was treated like absolute royalty during the entire trip. Volunteers we met at Give Kids the World, the resort where we stayed, really connected with him, and even flew in from states away when he was on hospice and for his funeral. I love reading about the amazing and unique experiences that others request. I will definitely be following this post. We became so close with our wish granters. Those people are truly angels in this earth. I am so thankful to everyone involved in Make-A-Wish, donors, volunteers, everyone. This organization made such a huge impact on our lives, and we made memories that our family will cherish forever. This doesn't answer your question, but I had cancer when I was 3 and apparently have been approached by Make-A-Wish. Unfortunately, I was only 3 and too young to actually make a reasonable wish, so the wish fell to my parents. They asked for furniture. Furniture! I'm told that I was very sarcastic, even at a young age. When they told me I could wish for whatever I wanted, I thought I could think of something impossible. A big brick house, so the big bad wolf can't blow it down. Make-A-Wish people said that they ran out of bricks granting their last wish. They handed me a catalog of playhouses to choose from. I defiantly flipped immediately to the back and poked one at random before probably returning to my Studio Ghibli movie. And that is the story of how Make-A-Wish built me a 2-story playhouse with heating, air, and electricity. I'm so glad they ran out of bricks. My mom became a wish granter shortly after my son went on his Make-A-Wish trip. She's done many wishes and has even been Wish Granter of the Year for her region a couple times. The only one that was a flat-out no was one recipient who asked for a sexual favor. Other than that, wishes for new cars are always a no, but Make-A-Wish will basically pimp out a car already owned by the recipient. Other than that, she's been a wish granter for everything from trips to shopping sprees to even being on an episode of Fixer Upper where she was wish granter for 2 boys who wanted an accessible playground in their backyard. I got to have mine granted in 1999 when I was 8. I wanted to see my 2 favorite baseball players, Mark McGwire and Chipper Jones, play. Make-A-Wish set up everything. Hotel, tickets to the game for my whole family, and even tickets to Six Flags. Before the first game, they brought us down for batting practice. Got to meet the whole Braves lineup. Didn't meet a single player from the Cardinals, and we were told McGwire specifically declined the request. Braves won that game. I feel karma paid off too. Braves made it to the World Series, Chipper won MVP, and is now a Hall of Famer. McGwire would later get marked for using steroids, will not make the Hall of Fame, and Cardinals finished under 500. My mom worked for Make-A-Wish. A little kid wanted to build a treehouse in his front yard. Make-A-Wish denied him for being too hard to coordinate. Make-A-Wish must not have approached the right people. I've been in construction for a long time. I could get about 30 qualified people together on short notice to build a treehouse for a terminally ill kid in a weekend or so. Shout out to Ron Swanson's old man on Reddit for that comment. Username checks out.
Gentlemen, what are some telltale signs that a woman is creepy? If she doesn't ask me many questions or doesn't seem interested in my life but still manages to be clingy. AKA, she just wants a boy, doesn't care who. Or just wants self-validation and doesn't care where from. When she puts a phone in your trunk on top of your spare tire to track you via GPS. I don't use my trunk. She knew that. She hooked it up to the 12-volt charger in my trunk and put a tracking app on the additional line she bought. I only discovered it when I had a blowout and had to use it. When I questioned her about it, she said she had trust issues. But good news! Every time I told her I was somewhere, I was at that place. We broke up after that. The story had a happy ending for me. It was a toxic relationship, but my next relationship was with the woman who would become my wife. We'll be celebrating our 8th wedding anniversary in a couple of months. I sometimes wish I'd been able to help my ex. She had quite a few good qualities, but the suspicion, insecurity, and attempts to control me were too much for me to deal with at the time. It sucks when you see what someone could become, but you know they probably never will. Girlfriend was practicing her signature and asked if she could see mine. Innocent enough, right? I rattle off a few beautiful Johnny Hancocks on a napkin and beyond admiring my own handiwork, didn't think of it further. Fast forward a week and she says, "Check out my new tattoo." And sure enough, it's my signature. First name only, on her right or wrong hip. Yikes. Fast forward to her solo European trip, turns out she cheated on me with a guy with the same first name. I bet he was scared. This girl I met on Tinder had me take her out to a restaurant and then switched tables with her friend. They'd been on blind dates and decided to switch. Her friend was not as attractive and I was very uncomfortable. After ordering my food, I went to the bathroom for 10 minutes to contemplate my exit strategy. When I got back, they'd both left. The other guy asked if he could sit with me, so we had dinner and he ate his date's enchiladas. It was actually kind of fun after they left. This turned out way nicer than expected. And? You and that guy fell in love over those enchiladas and have been married for 20 years now? No, we both ate and I fronted the tab because it was $26 and I was in a good mood. I saw him on campus about a year later and kind of smiled in memory. Commiseration meals. There is something so very wholesome about the result of this, even if it was just an hour's companionship instead of a lifelong friendship. My ex would freak out and throw things and scream at me. And that's not the disturbing thing. She would freaking forget about it and hit reset and act like it didn't happen the next day. Over and over, I started filming her episodes to prove to myself that I wasn't going crazy. That's called gaslighting. It's a form of emotional abuse, and I most often see people who are very, very insecure deep down use it. My dad did this to me and my siblings as we were growing up. He would have these big blow-ups at us and shout at us to leave the house, tell us we're worthless, what have you. The next day he'd be offering to make us lunch before we left for our work shift. If we, being vulnerable teenagers with bruised feelings, would turn down the offer, he'd get mad again. Not super aggressive necessarily. I'd leave for work early before letting it get that far, but he'd complain to our mum that we are ungrateful and mean to him because we refused his gracious offer. Happy news, my dad actually started to get real help about 3 months ago. This behavior was ongoing for the last 15 years, but for the last 2 months, I've been getting updates saying he's doing better. When after 2 days she tells you that she loves you, and also proceeds to mention that she loves your green eyes so much that if we ever broke up, she would steal them while you sleep and keep them in a jar in her room. When she constantly tells you how everybody in her life is out to get her, and nothing is her fault. I've been friends with her for about 15 years, and at times it feels like being a victim is her entire identity. At work, all of her bosses hate her for no reason, or because she's a woman, even though it seems to follow her from job to job, and she has many female bosses with whom this problem still exists. Her group of friends are completely different every 1.5 years or so, because she inevitably has a falling out and it's always their fault. In relationships, she behaves as if her boyfriend du jour is the only redeeming light in a world of evil, rotten people, until they break up, at which point he's always portrayed as a bullying monster and a shining example of what pigs all men are, in very public tirades on every social media page she has. Constant subtweets 24/7, but more so after a breakup. Now, I don't doubt that she's been hurt in relationships before. She, nor anybody else, doesn't deserve that. But I do have a hard time believing that every single man she's ever dated is a psychopath, every single boss she's ever had has been mistaken and out to get her, and every single best friend is actually a two-faced B-word. At some point, the common factor in all these situations is her. I don't mean to minimize the bad relationships she might have had. They are real issues, and people claiming abuse should be believed and should be taken seriously. After all these years and all these instances of problems, I do have a hard time believing her specifically, though. If the whole world smells like crap, check your shoes. If you meet a butthole in the morning, you met a butthole. If you meet buttholes all day long every day, you're the butthole. Anyone who just posts stuff about their exes on social media is someone to stay away from. It just screams, I'm an attention seeker and I'm unable to be mature about breakups. Bonus points if none of the problems in the relationship were apparently their fault. She'll joke about having kids before you're even in a serious relationship. I went on a couple of dates with this one girl who had mentioned how much she wanted kids. Nothing unusual, pretty common actually. I'm looking forward to being a dad one day. Then she started sending me those weird things where you put two people's pictures together and see what their kids would look like. One time would be quirky, but she sent me a different one every morning for a week. Broke it off when I realized I hadn't even given her a picture of myself. Oh, that last sentence was like a horror movie, oh my god. Met this girl in church group in middle school. We got to know each other because of the group, but didn't really become friends or anything. Stopped going when I went to high school and never really talked to her for 3 years. Then she commented on a Facebook status I had and we got to chatting and I agreed to hang out the next weekend. I asked if we should invite other people in our church group since I hadn't seen any of them in a while and she said no. I thought this was because she liked me and wanted to hang out with me, so I was flattered. I kept talking to her throughout the day. The next morning I woke up at around 10 a.m. to about 7 or 8 missed calls, 2 voice messages and countless text messages from her. I was pretty creeped out by then. The nail in the coffin was one of the messages I got was from an old friend from the church group asking me if I talked to that girl. I was confused how my friend knew I'd talked to this girl before. Turns out the girl had started messaging my friends asking when I wake up in the morning and why I hadn't messaged her back. That went from, oh yeah, going on a date to nope, overnight. I had this. I was excited to go on a first date with a cute girl. Night before the date, everything is good. Come morning, I get a text from her saying she's a little nervous because she just got out of a fairly serious relationship. I replied saying, yeah, that's fair, how recent was it? I'm wondering if this is like last week, a few months ago, just trying to understand her position. She flips a switch and starts swearing at me and acting like I was accusing her of something. Very odd. She got very defensive. I told her not to worry about the date, maybe not the best timing. She says some snide, yeah, fine. And that really was that. Very strange. Plot twist, the relationship was to be ended the next day after you proved stable enough a stepping stone. Hopefully these were all teenage problems rather than personality problems. There's hope that the girl in the first story grew out of it. I once responded to a flatmate ad, but the criteria was single, male, 30-ish year old. Turns out she wasn't looking for a flatmate, she was looking for a husband. I was always clear that she would just be a flatmate to me. The weird things included getting upset when I didn't make her aware of when I was coming home or just coming home late. She slept in a pile of laundry, but the rest of the house was immaculate. I brought a girl home once and she moved from the lounge to her bedroom beside mine so she could hear what was going on. Things got super weird after a lot of daytime texting with nonsense questions and flat meetings. Then outright banning my friends. Then an extreme amount of verbal abuse, and when I moved out she'd just come up to me and yell stuff like, "You're such a fricking loser." Basically, I'd started seeing another girl and she went over the edge. I always refrained from reacting and just got the frick out. For those of you wondering, no, I never slept with her and the boundaries were always super clear from the start. Specifying age and gender and relationship status is pretty common for a share house, and I've spent 10 years traveling and working in different countries and see that requirement all the time. This happened in Melbourne, Australia, and I'd just moved to there, and I was trying to get out of a backpacker hostel quickly. There weren't many red flags on the ad, or our first meeting, but a lot was hidden from me before I moved in. The laundry pile was always on her bed. I have no idea if it was clean or not, but it was always there every day. Some of you are saying that's not weird, but I haven't seen that before or after. She wasn't ugly, but she wasn't anywhere near hot enough for me to take the risk. When I say she moved from the lounge to the bedroom, I mean she was watching TV in the lounge, we came in and said hello, went to my bedroom moments later, and we could hear her in there reading a book. We never had any conflict up until I gave her notice about moving out and she asked if it was her. It was, but I made up some crap about being new to the area and wanting to be somewhere more social, closer to the nightlife, etc. The girl I'd started seeing was mega hot, way out of my league, and the awkwardness of bringing her to my flat surely ended that relationship prematurely. I could also tell she was in the next room because people who are alive and nearby make normal human noises. Also, sadly, I got instantly friend-zoned by the hot girl, so we were just hanging out. It was easy to hear noise from the next room, not sure why that confused people. I was always super nervous around the hot girl, I don't know why. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Here are some of my red flags. She dyes her hair every color of the rainbow just to see how you'll react. Tells your family to back off because you're hers. Cheats with her male roommate while you run out to the car to grab a red box. Gives you herpes. F you, Rachel. Go eat a bag of members. An inability to apologize for anything ever. Punishing you with the silent treatment for doing something you had no idea would be offensive to them. Having expectations of you, and then they don't try to meet them themselves. I would never stand that in a relationship, but it happened to me with work colleagues. They never understood why I don't mind that they're ghosting me, instead of annoying me or freaking out at me. Some nice peace and quiet for a change. In high school, there was a girl who liked me. She ended up carving my name into her foot. Soulmate.
She probably wanted a friend in you.
No, I think she wanted the friend in her. Asking for your passwords, your phone, email, Facebook, etc. as a sign of trust. Nope, I have nothing to hide. However, when you think you need to have that information, it shows you already don't trust me. And anyone who asks and then says they won't use it is lying. They may not use it that day or even soon, but they will use it at some point, because the same suspicion that led to them asking for it will lead them to use it. Oh, and I'm not talking about something like your Netflix or Amazon Prime password, which can just be convenient. Heck, I have some of my friends' Netflix passwords. We're talking about phone, email, and social media passwords specifically. Secondly, if you want to offer it, more power to you. But someone shouldn't ask for that is my thought, especially not as a way to prove that you aren't cheating. And 3, like most things, marriage changes stuff. I still think it's a bit much to have all of someone's passwords and have access to everything they ever do or people say to them, but I understand it a bit more in that situation. I had a girlfriend who yelled at me for spending $9,000 on my mountain bike instead of her. I race professionally and I took her out to dinner at least 3 times a week and got her gifts all the time. Plus, we got to travel the world thanks to sponsors. But the one purchase for myself was too selfish. The bike was an Aurum HSP2 with box components, in case you're wondering.
This is literally my roommate's girlfriend. He takes her out to dinner 3 times a week, travels 50 miles every week back and forth to visit her at school, buys her jewelry and nice things, etc. Yet the one time he couldn't make it to her school for a visit, she called him to scold him for his selfishness and then broke up with him via text. The saddest part is that he drove all the way to her school that night to talk to her about it, and she fell asleep before he arrived, so he had to sleep in a parking lot in his car overnight. Until she woke up. Somehow they're still together. Makes me mad because he deserves so much better.
You should remind these people of the sunk cost fallacy. Just because you've invested time and money into someone, it doesn't mean you should continue with them. Make your decision based on what you know now. Oh god, I'd never thought to use sunk cost fallacy in the context of a relationship, but now you mention it, it might be the main reason so many terrible relationships go on for as long as they do. Food for thought, people. Tighty-whities stapled to her wall as conquests. I've seen it, it's out there. Extra points for rubbers instead of underwear.
Historic documentation.
Talks about all the health ailments she thinks or is convinced she has, and then continues to consume foods which she claims she's extremely allergic or intolerant to that are wreaking havoc on her health. And holy frick, as I was typing this, a text from her came in telling me about some random health ailment. When she goes through your drawers when you're sleeping. Oh, my cat used to do that. I used to always wake up to socks all over my bedroom and have no idea why, until one time I woke up in the middle of the night to see my cat systematically taking socks out of my sock drawer and then discarding them somewhere else. I think you should start seeing a different cat. This one sounds really toxic. Outright refusing to believe that a guy might not be into her advances. I've seen a woman stare in bewilderment at her boyfriend after he had to repeatedly remove her hand from his groin because she couldn't comprehend that he didn't feel like getting felt up in a public area. I've also had a woman, middle-aged, throw a tantrum because I wouldn't buy her a drink when I, 22 at the time, was at a bar, while I was with my parents and some visiting family members. I worked at a resort hotel as a younger man. Older women would legit put their hands wherever they wanted on the staff and think it was hilarious. But if you got upset or didn't gracefully remove your body from their grasp, they would get teed off. Like, how dare you seem ungrateful after I did you the favor of massaging your eggplant while you tried to pour coffee for the table? What the frick is it with people who think they have the right to the bodies of waitstaff? I've seen this way too many times against both genders. It's messed up.
I had to leave a party after my grad school graduation because this girl who I couldn't stand wouldn't stop trying to stick her tongue in my mouth. Like, I'd push her away and go to a different part of the bar, and she'd follow me and try to make out with me. After several minutes of me telling her to F off, I just had to leave. 60,000 texts will do it, not 65,000. What about 69,420 texts? Heh, nice. A girl I befriended in college seemed pretty cool at first, but I quickly learned she had huge attention-seeking problems. I took her to a party where she was all over me. Arm in arm, holding my hand everywhere we went, I wasn't allowed to be alone. When I was talking to another pair at the party, a couple at that, she kicked it up a notch, trying to kiss and be cuddly and whatnot. I was fine with it at the time because, hey, she's nice, she's cute, a little intense, but I could be misreading it. But I certainly was into her. It was kinda nice being the target of someone else's affection like this. After the party, I walked her back to the dorm and she informatively told me not to try anything because she had a boyfriend. Bonus! Same girl a few weeks later told me that if I'd really wanted to sleep with her, I shouldn't have told her I was straight, because she can't help but turn men. A long time ago in the 90s, I was set up on a blind date. The girl knew way too much about me. She knew my brother's names, where I grew up, and other personal stuff you'd have to dig a little to find out about. This was pre-Facebook, and back in the 90s, she would have had to ask people who actually knew me to find out. She was just a friend of a friend of a friend kind of thing, so I noped out of that one pretty quick. Later, I asked the people who'd set me up on the date what the heck, etc., and it turns out the girl had this super long crush on me and was reportedly devastated that I wasn't into her. Luckily, I steered clear of that possible Stephen King novel scenario. It sounds like she should have really just played it cool and asked you about those things on the date.
Yeah, those are all really reasonable questions to ask about a person when you're going on a blind date with them. Save for the siblings' name thing. She should have brought that up in a more natural context. You know, I have to ask the question, is it any better if this person is concealing their obsession and asking a list of pre-prepared questions they already knew the answers to and saving the crazy obsessive reveal for later? I at least appreciate how upfront they were about it. I dated a girl in university that turned out to be severely mentally ill, and we dated for many years as she turned me into a shadow of myself, devoid of self-esteem, friends, and any sense of self. Heed my words or be doomed. She wouldn't like it if I went anywhere without her, or did anything without letting her know. I don't know if it was jealousy or what, but it really angered her, and if I ever went anywhere without her, I'd spend most of my time chatting with her on my phone and trying to calm her down. She would contact me randomly throughout the day to tell me she felt terrible and I had to go and be with her. It didn't matter what I was doing. Usually I was at class or at university or trying to hang out with my friends. It was expected of me to speak very lovingly and tell her I'd be over right away. Even if I went over right away, she would get mad that I didn't sound very happy about it, then fight about that. Or if I said I couldn't do it, she'd lose it at that too. You can't imagine how badly this affected my academic and social life. Even if we were together, I couldn't do stuff that wasn't about her. Doodling in a sketchbook while watching a movie? She'd flip out. Mess around on my guitar while we're lying around in my room chatting? Fury. She hated all women who dressed freely. Girl in shorts? Whore. Girl in miniskirt? Horrible slag. What was weird was that she was a hippie liberal girl with progressive parents, but when it came to other women being in touch with themselves, it was somehow terrible. Didn't have a lot of female friends in general, and if my housemates ever brought girls over to our house, she'd get really insecure. Would have random episodes due to her bipolar, causing her to scream at me, throw crap at me, drive extremely erratically, and just generally treat me like garbage. I was basically linked to her 24/7, either physically or by phone, and if we ever got into any kind of argument, I couldn't just walk away and try to cool off. That would drive her nuts and she would panic even more and pursue me. I could go on about her and her behavior, but these were at least things that were there from pretty much the start. Other things revealed themselves over time. In the end, she broke up with me, which I couldn't believe. At first I was angry with her, but very quickly that anger turned to me. When I think back to how long I stayed with her and how badly she treated me, I feel such hatred for myself for doing that to myself. I was weak. She was broken, but she made me feel like I mattered sometimes, and that was enough for far too long. A girl wanted to date me, and she told me how she climbed in her ex's second-story window to argue with him. No thanks. when they know more about your errands than what you told her. Extra creepy point if she becomes angry when you deviate from your initial daily plans. Extra creepy points if she starts angrily texting you when you change your plans as your day is unfolding. When she's a colleague from work and she turns up at the gym coincidentally 5 minutes after you've arrived, and she's in a low-cut top and starts laughing and touching your arms and bending over and just generally being weird. Especially when she knows that you have a wife and kids and this 45-minute session is the only peace you get 3 times a week. The second date is to a federal prison to visit her son that's doing life for murder. Later saying the phone she snuck in her hoo-ha made her too sore to do the deed that night. What's the most socially accepted form of self-destruction?
Self-hatred and negative self-talk.
Indeed, sustaining that negative voice in your head all day really breaks down your self-worth and self-esteem. We're all flawed in many little and different ways. Try to be kind to yourself and others, if only for little things. I've been trying to do that for a while now, and it helps, and others will react more positively towards you, as well as helping you get a bit more positive bit by bit. I mean, yeah, but it allows me to go harder in the gym.
I once told my coach at the gym I'm not motivated by hearing, "You can do it." I need some old school drill sergeant motivation screaming how worthless I am because I can't get the weight up.
Sleep deprivation. Not many adults brag about the amount of alcohol they drink. At one point, that just isn't acceptable anymore. But so many can brag about sleeping less than the recommended hours. Like it's an achievement to be able to function on too little sleep. No, you're harming yourself, inducing stress to your body.
I have genuine sympathy for people who aren't doing that by choice, though.
But if I know they're doing it by choice and trying to brag about only getting 2 hours of sleep a night, I'll just start bragging about how much sleep I'm getting.
Slept 9 hours last night and then I had a nap afterwards. I feel great.
Exactly this. I suffered 10 years of severe sleep disorders, and to an extent I still do. Not so quirky anymore when you black out on buses, ache during the walk to work, see pink elephants floating down the lecture room. Forget last year's entire vacation, lose relationships, or fail class, because your unconscious self breaks alarm clocks without you even knowing. You don't realize how critical your sleep is to daily function until you've been deprived of it for the better part of a decade.
Just get an alarm clock. B-word, by the time I get to sleep, an alarm clock isn't waking me. I once woke hours and hours after my alarm went off. It was still going off, 3 feet from my face, like a freaking siren, just deafeningly loud. Sleep disorder doesn't give a frick.
Yeah, I have to get someone to wake me up normally these days if I have to be up early. Suffering from depression and anxiety, with my antidepressants making me extra tired, and I've been a lifelong vivid dreamer, again, made worse by meds. I can regularly wake up with all of my alarms still going a foot from my head. Even weirder, I can wake up, turn off my alarms, fall back to sleep and have absolutely no memory of doing it. A couple of times I've actually sent messages or written notes on a post-it note during the night and fallen back asleep. I've literally hallucinated when waking up multiple times. Waking up in the morning, I regularly dream or hallucinate university emails being sent to me, and read emails and reply to messages that don't exist, or just completely make up conversations with people, because I hallucinated and they said something else. At the same time as all of this, I can suffer from insomnia. I basically fall asleep easily when I shouldn't, but only sleeping tablets are helping me to sleep at night right now. People get so mad at me for being late or sleeping through alarms, and I just can't help it. It's not me being lazy. It's not me not caring. I genuinely can't control when I wake up, and my alarm isn't guaranteed to wake me up every time. I didn't wake up and decide to go back to sleep. I just sleep through everything. I'm just not, and likely never will be, someone who can easily wake up in the mornings. Oh gosh, I'm counting my lucky stars that I'm a big sleepy sheepdog of a person who can and will drop asleep anywhere and everywhere and sleep like a log, provided there isn't any special stress going on in my life. Overworking. It's lionized and not just socially accepted. Somehow, 12 or more hours a day in a cubicle has become a badge of honor. Working insane hours takes priority over family and health, at least until you drop dead. In Japan, older, burnt-out salarymen were sidelined to sit in a nicer office and not expected to do anything much but stare out of the window. In some ways, that seems worse than dropping dead.
Give me a nice office, no expectation to complete any task, a computer with internet, and I will mindlessly scroll through Reddit the whole way to retirement.
You'd think. I had this situation, and at first it was great, but after a year I'd come to the end of the internet and was losing my mind. I think if you were working from home it would be one thing, but having to trudge to the office every day to do nothing of value got old really quickly. I finally ended up quitting for a job where I actually get to do something. Get injured on the job in the US. As long as it clearly wasn't your fault, they can't fire you. But they will put you in a room to either do nothing at all or paperwork, and because many places have a policy of no cell phone use, you'll wish you were let go or actually died in the accident.
Alcohol.
Alcohol is the only self-harm that people look at you strangely for not participating in.
And they'll even bully you about it.
Yep, I've never smoked, toked, drank, or did any substances in my life, and it was only ever drinkers that got upset about that at all. Why not? Are you sick? Are you pregnant? What's wrong? On medication? Like, shut the frick up for frick's sake, and let me drink my Diet Coke in peace.
Yeah, I'm on 103 days of quitting alcohol, and the main reason I don't want to tell people is because I'm afraid they'll think something horrible happened. In reality, I'm just getting too old and busy for drinking and hangovers to fit into my life.
I've always been so mind-blown at how alcohol is treated in our society, and the bias with alcohol versus other substances. If someone mentions smoking or using other substances, they're usually looked at as lowlives or addicts, and others judge them and act extremely concerned with their health and safety, and say how bad it is to do those things. And yet, those same people are always the ones who are going out to the bar every night, can't de-stress without having a drink, and always need to be drinking to have a good time. And they don't see anything wrong with their behavior. The amount I've learned in my 20s about how much alcohol truly affects your body is insane to me. Why do we normalize blacking out? You're pretty much overdosing on alcohol. Why do we normalize terrible hangovers? I just don't understand it. Why can people drink until they pass out in a bush and laugh about being blackout, and go to work the next day and never be tested for anything? But someone who smokes green herb on occasion is always at risk of failing a substance test and losing their job. It's crazy. Doom scrolling. Huh? Thanks, agreed. And that's enough Reddit for now. Control F4.
Huh? I see what you did there. You're still on Reddit, since Alt F4 is to force close. Sneaky, sneaky.
Alcohol, by a long shot, to the point where people who don't drink are considered sanctimonious outliers.
This is true. I don't drink and never have done. I'm 27, and honestly, the worst people for criticizing or becoming defensive were my parents' generation. People my age were pretty generally good about it, especially at uni, which really surprised me. But I'm still considered unusual, and many people my age do alcohol-based activities like clubbing, or bottomless brunches or bars, etc. I do think attitudes are changing, though.
I've been sober for more than 3 years, and my friends still routinely ask me, "You still not drinking?" Despite knowing that I quit because I had a problem. It's bonkers. I don't have a problem with anyone who drinks, so please don't have a problem with me not drinking. Besides, now you've got a sober driver and someone to pay attention to your kids when you get completely crap-faced at the beach.
Wondering if you're ugly.
The worst part is that some of the people who think about it the most are completely normal and not ugly, and some of them are even attractive. Maybe self-esteem issues, sadly. I can see how that's addictive. I just scroll through looking at pictures and reading comments for a good hour or so. At first I thought it was just hot women fishing for compliments, and there are some in there for sure. But reading the comments, there's a lot of people that genuinely believe they're ugly when they really aren't. It's quite sad. Mathletes. It's social suicide.
She doesn't even go here. That's so fetch. Stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen.
People have said great answers like overworking, lack of sleep, and perfectionism, but I'd like to add a more niche one: digital self-harm. Looking up things that horrify and scare you, or making you feel insecure, such as an eating disorder encouragement, or incel pages that tell you deserve pain, is a form of self-harm. I've noticed whenever I'm not doing well, I end up going down research rabbit holes about disease, war, horrible historical events, gore, and all that crap. It's interesting, and I justify it because it's interesting, but honestly, it just makes me feel more horrible. Self-harm isn't just physical. Sometimes if you have anxiety or depression, your mind wants something that makes you feel worse because it's trying to seek out a reason why you feel so bad. It's true, once I was feeling like crap, full on having anxiety attacks, and ended up looking up methods of taking my life online. Not to try those methods, just to horrify myself out of my mental state. 10 out of 10 would not recommend. It's such a strange urge. It made so much sense once I realized it was simply my head trying to find a reason I felt so bad, because it was distressing that the reason was simply mental illness.
A lack of sleep.
Overeating.
Overeating and eating an unhealthy diet. It's like the #1 public health problem in America, and yet I see so many stories about over-exercising here instead. There are at least 5 stories further on that are some form of exercising. How is obesity or overeating not higher on the list? Well, maybe the fact that it's not recognized here means that it fits the title. Working night shift. Underrated answer. I worked the night shift for 2 years. I barely saw my wife or my friends or my family. It was hard to function. Things like going to the dentist or the bank became a huge hassle. The crazy swing of getting back on your day schedule for your days off so you can see people, then back to overnights, puts so much stress on your body. I'm a night owl and I function best after midnight. I can relate with your problems for sure.
This is the comment I was looking for. Although nights are a lot better to work as they're quiet and you get a lot of money. They are horrible for your mental and physical health though. You barely sleep, barely see your friends and family. You have to constantly cancel things as you're physically not able to go as you're drained away.
I'm on year 20 of nights, and no way I could get away with half the crap I do on day shift.
Yep, even on my freelancer schedule, I push myself so hard to get all of my work done on a regular 9 to 5 schedule, because I remember what I turned into as a guy who stayed up all night working, and I don't want to go there again, thank you. Not leaving a marriage due to social stigmas surrounding divorce or the otherwise religious implications holding you there. Stop delaying happiness due to what other people's expectations of a good person are. You're not exercising duty by staying in a toxic relationship, you're self-harming. On that tack, there's also getting married. People need to know that it's okay to be alone and not lonely.
I wish more people understood this. I haven't been in a relationship in 7 years and it's by choice. I still do fun things and spend time with friends, but having a relationship just to have someone is not a priority. Meanwhile, my coworkers and people at church keep hinting that the right one will come along soon. Ugh.
You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Extreme exercise.
Almost every ultra runner I know is an addict that traded drinking or substances for running.
As someone who traded drinking for lifting and then had to learn to moderate that, I've never been less surprised by anything. I'm a food addict, which is part of why I took up ultra running. I guess that's a little better than drinking or substances. I feel bad for any alcoholic taking up this sport, as beer is very much a part of the culture. I dislike beer, so this makes it weird for me. There are even beer mile runs, where you drink as much beer as you can, usually at several stops along the mile. Aid stations will often have Fireball or other shots late at night. Many races are expected to serve beer at the finish line. You can't really get away from it.
I was about to give you crap for saying this, but then I quickly realized you're 100% correct. Training hard and working hard for health and fitness is okay, but there are countless people destroying themselves through exercise, ego lifting, a crappy diet, and performance-enhancing substances. A lot of extreme athletes are actually too fit, with heart rates so low that they're at risk of a heart failure.
Yeah, past a certain point, exercise isn't healthy in the conventional sense. High-level athletes, bodybuilders, and others are really pushing their bodies past their natural limits. Mind you, the huge majority of non-professionals never reach this point. So if anyone's reading these comments thinking, so it's healthier to not exercise? No, that's absolutely not the takeaway. Just do everything in moderation. Spending time on Reddit.
But that's not even socially accepted.
Without using the third-party apps. Plastic surgery. I don't know why we can't admit as a society that social media causes body image issues, that body trends change due to what's seen as popular in that moment, but plastic surgery doesn't fix your self-esteem. Like 90% of the time, cosmetic work gets done due to what you're seeing praised in the media, but when people do it, everyone just responds as long as you're happy. Like, bro, what? That person's body isn't the issue, it's the media. They didn't actually fix anything. That's why so many people who get surgery get it on a repeat basis, because they're never truly satisfied. Sugar.
I need to start cutting it out as I know that that's why I'm slightly larger and unhealthier than I want to be, but it's so gosh darn addictive and I hate sweeteners. It's obviously supposed to be addictive and it works so well.
It's not just you that's addicted, it's the bacteria in your gut. A diet rich in sugars selects for populations of bacteria that crave sugar, and you experience their cravings. Good news is, you can starve them by reducing sugar consumption and replace them with bacteria that prefer other foods. Overeating or drinking. Alcohol, the only substance that you have to explain why you're not taking it. Going through something and going around like nothing happens to you because you're a man. This is real. I was raised by one of those manly men and thought it was how it was supposed to be. Therapy and allowing myself to feel saved my marriage. Hooch or suntanning, perhaps? The tanning thing is so weird. I visited my family a couple of weeks ago and they were laughing at me because I put sunscreen on my legs before I went for a hike. They were literally saying, "But we're not going to the beach." Then my mum told me I looked good because I'd caught the sun over the weekend at a wedding I went to. When I said, "Yeah, that's not good, I only had a hat but no sunblock," she told me I should be trying to get a tan. She's well aware I've had multiple precancerous lesions removed from my face, and we're genetically at a very high risk of melanoma. That's not tanning, that's just getting vitamin D, which is indeed very healthy. If you do it in a tanning salon or studio, it is tanning. Nail biting. Yeah, but especially when you bite to the point of pain or bleeding. I used to do this. I finally broke the habit by keeping my nails trimmed very short and filed. I catch myself every once in a while biting a nail, so I get the clippers out and cut off what's irritating me. Oh yeah, I know an entire family that has had to buy an economy-size box of nail files because if they don't have their nails sanded down to the pink, they'll absently start biting away unconsciously the moment they begin thinking of anything. Crazy. I also think it's over-exercising. As a child, I frequently hurt myself due to depression and other issues. It's been years now and I don't cut myself anymore, but whenever I feel upset, I will exercise to the point that my muscles will cramp and my body will bruise. When I do this, nobody tells me that I should get help, but instead they compliment me and say how much better I've gotten. It's true I've gotten better, but self-harm differs in so many ways, and this is just one of those ways. If your large muscles are genuinely bruised through exercise, you definitely need help. That can lead to life-changing health problems or even death. Is it really like that, or do you just do extreme workouts randomly and just get super sore because you don't work out regularly? I mean, if I don't do heavy squats for a month and then knock out multiple sets at heavy weights, I can barely sit down for the next 2 days. Watching adult flicks. It depends on who you are though. Some people can enjoy it without getting addicted, but it can ruin other people's lives. It's probably way worse of a problem than most people think, at least as easily available and pervasive as it is. I remember stumbling across one of those hot games sites back in the early 10s. Embarrassing to say the least, but looking back, it's a miracle I didn't get hacked and had info stolen. Then there's the links to the weird stuff. Stuff that could really put the differences between atheists and Christians aside. People forget that stuff can get really dark and harmful, especially to the dumb hormonal kids who don't know any better. I have the aching suspicion it'll be our generation's cigarettes. I think a lot of people aren't really informed about what addiction actually means. It's not harmful to you if it doesn't bother you in your life in any way. Everything else is just Christian purity bullcrap. I think a lot of people assume that it isn't harmful if it doesn't have an obvious negative impact on your life, because adult flicks have never been this accessible until maybe 15 years ago. The full effects are not well studied or understood. The main harm that I've read is how it can condition you to expect a very intense degree of arousal, but without any of the other factors that come with doing the deed, mainly things like touch or vulnerability. Again, it isn't incredibly well studied, and the stuff I did read didn't find that degree of conditioning to be widespread. Social media. Surprised this isn't higher up. It's like self-harm for the mind. It has terrible physical effects as well. Like hunchback. My brother in Christ, you're saying this on a social media app. Don't throw stones. Smoking cigarettes. This is the obvious answer, I think. Certainly it would have been in my youth. One of the best things that has happened in the US in my life is the decline in smoking, especially public smoking. Smoke used to be everywhere. Ugh. Getting fat. The source? Me. I didn't have the balls to take my own life quickly, so I aimed to kill myself slowly with cake, chips, and ice cream. Joke's on me though. A few years of hedonism was good for perspective after a stress-induced breakdown. Health took quite a massive hit, but at least I'm still here to recognize that, and the rebuild over recent years has been quite pleasant. It sounds like you found a way to survive during a difficult time, and you should feel proud of how far you've come, instead of feeling shame for what you went through. Oh, shame is my whole bit, unfortunately. Toxic self-talk has been a constant wrestle, but a strong routine helps against these things. It's now 4:30 a.m. and I'm about to make my way to the gym. Your progress is awesome. It's really hard to stay away from really unhealthy things. It gets pushed in your face everywhere, and it's designed to make us like it. The same with booze. It's everywhere, although it's super dangerous if consumed too much, just because some very powerful people make a lot of money on this stuff. Good on you for getting better, even with the obstacles.
I used to get my dopamine from ice cream, and now I'm diabetic. Yay!
I banned myself from Ben & Jerry's. It's too gosh darn sweet. Overworking and self-deprecation. Starvation. Eating disorders. Being thin is literally a beauty standard, and it's incredibly unhealthy. Having a dangerously low BMI is just as unhealthy as being morbidly obese. Eating disorders are literally the deadliest mental health diagnoses, in part due to all the comorbidities, and yet people idolize and glorify thinness to an unreasonable degree.
Gym bros and their insane diets that are genuinely just eating disorders. No one actually wants to eat 2,000 calories of plain chicken and rice.
I like chicken and rice. I really enjoy my steady diet based on the same main dishes every day. For me, it was diced chicken breast with salt and some Italian-style dry seasoning, plain rice with a splash of olive oil, and a side of whatever frozen vegetables were cheap at the moment. I'd have oatmeal for breakfast, then 2 big chickens during the day and some eggs in the evening. Day after day after day, the same things. It was great, so efficient and so easy to prepare. I don't bother counting and gym broing anymore, but still chicken rice is something I eat a lot.
That sounds a lot better than just plain chicken and rice. Yeah, efficient and quick meals are very nice.
Chicken and spicy rice, like Nando's style, is my favorite meal, but I cannot imagine a giant plate full of plain and likely unseasoned chicken with just plain rice. I had that when I had bad flu as a kid, and I would never want to eat it outside of that.
Unrestrained consumption of processed food, obsession with reality shows, and an overusage of technology.
Dieting. Not all diets, of course, but 1,000-calorie ones, or diets that completely cut off big food groups, or insane stuff like juice diets, are a straight way into eating disorders. Speaking from experience. Self-sabotage. Not sure if it counts, though. Almost all of the answers are about self-destructive behaviors, not self-harming. Deliberate injury to oneself, typically as manifestation of a mental condition, is self-harm. Things like sugar, etc. aren't self-harm.
Using so-called social media.
Voting Tory. What's the most bizarre medical issue you've seen someone trying to hide or mask?
Do you have any medical conditions? No. What medications are you on? Proceeds to name at least 10 medications. Oh, that's so true.
Do you have any medical conditions, sir?
Nope.
Are you on any medications?
Metoprolol.
So, you have high blood pressure.
No, the metoprolol keeps it down.
Actual conversation I had with the guy a week ago. Any past medical history? Oh, high blood pressure, but that's it. No other history. Nope, that's it. Proceeds to take his shirt off. Sir, what is that huge scar on your chest? Oh, that's from my triple bypass. That's medical history, sir. Anything else you want to add in now? Oh, does CHF and diabetes count? I have those as well.
Elderly people are the worst at this. They'll tell you they have no significant medical history, then when you look at their notes, you find out they've had 3 strokes, 2 heart attacks, and a touch of bowel cancer.
That's why I always go with, have you ever had to go to the hospital or something to that effect? No question is truly foolproof, but that one at least is general enough that you might get more info than you need, rather than less. My favorite. Do you smoke? Oh heavens no! Have you ever smoked? Yes, but I've quit.
How long ago?
This morning.
Once took an initial history from a patient who reluctantly admitted he'd had 2 heart attacks in the last 5 years. I started to ask him a bunch of follow-up questions and he got extremely huffy and defensive. It's not a big deal. If I'd known you were going to act like this, I never would have told you.
This happened to me 3 days ago. A guy came in a wheelchair. Do you have any medical issues?
No.
Why are you in a wheelchair then?
Oh, I have a degenerative neuromuscular condition and type 2 diabetes.
In a weird way, I can kind of understand this if he'd been in the wheelchair for a while. I'm missing most of my left lung, and there were times when I answered no without thinking, because to me it's just me and not a medical anomaly. Each time my mum was like,
"What the frick, you're missing a lung."
I can see some poor med student doing a chest x-ray on you and trying to figure out why he can't find your lung while trying to play it cool. So, you've never felt like something's missing? This is hilarious. I'm going to have to ask some of my medical practitioner friends about their most egregious examples. Quitting smoking that morning and not considering yourself a smoker is either a great show of resolution or complete delusion. Not a doctor, but when I was working as a med tech in the ER, We had a 75-year-old male patient come in with an extraordinarily low blood pressure, think 70/40, and a ton of facial and upper body bruising. He was brought in via emergency medical services after the nurses at his nursing home found him on the floor in his room, where notably there was some blood on the wall. The guy wouldn't talk to us regarding why he was there, but was very talkative in terms of pretty much anything else. Sports, the news, etc. We eventually were able to get him talking after 4 hours, and he confessed that he'd wanted to take his own life and had taken the remaining amount of his prescribed nitroglycerin. Used for chest pain, it lowers your blood pressure rather quickly. Nitro is also the active ingredient in dynamite, but the amount in the pills is minuscule compared to what's in dynamite. And he had tried to blow himself up by running into the wall repeatedly. He was a really nice guy that sent a card to us after everything. He was just extremely lonely. Things to do today. Stop by bank and get quarters for laundry. Call brother and wish him happy birthday. Research nursing homes to volunteer at. I admitted a guy for pneumonia, which was odd because he was young and strapping, no other medical issues, and X-ray didn't look quite right. The pieces just didn't add up, so I started questioning him more closely. Do you use any substances? The patient said, Substances? That's disgusting. I'm no fricking junkie. I've never touched substances in my life. I moved on to other questions and suddenly, Look, Doc, I just want you to know that I might have used white snow once or twice, years and years ago. I just snorted it though. That wouldn't cause this, right? How long ago? Like 10 years, maybe longer. It shouldn't be affecting you after this long. Well, more like 5. Years? Like 5 months ago. This goes on forever until he admits that he just got off a massive binge the day before, where he spent the past 3 days in a hotel with some loose women, smoking crystal non-stop. He finishes with, But I don't want you to think I'm one of those dirty junkies. No, I think you're the idiot who lied and was getting treated for pneumonia instead of getting the proper treatment for crystal lung, which is what he had. Here's a tip, I genuinely don't care. I'm not your mother, your spouse, or your priest. Don't waste my time and endanger your health spewing bullcrap. Whatever horrible, twisted thing you think is too shameful to talk about, I promise you, I've seen worse. Not so much bizarre as clever. I tested a patient who should have been positive for opiates, as I prescribed them. We do that too. The urine looked completely normal, but the test came back bizarre. He had an insanely high specific gravity, which means there's a lot of stuff dissolved in his pee. Sample was positive for opiates, but had 0 confirmatory metabolites, what your body turns the medication into. Otherwise, the test was totally normal. It took me a couple of minutes to figure out how this was possible. The patient was selling their pills instead of taking them and didn't want to get caught. They crushed up the pill and put it into the urine. This made the test positive for opiates, but because it had never gone through the body, the testing machine had found no metabolites. I use the case to find the smart med student in the group now. As a former pain management patient, that idiot is why we can't have nice things. My aunt is a family doctor, so patients come to her with symptoms and she directs them towards a specialist based on her diagnosis. One day, an elderly husband and wife came into the office, and when asked why they'd come in, the wife responded, His foot has been smelling for a while, and I finally convinced him to come and have it looked at. My aunt, not hard of smelling, concurred that his foot stunk. She asked him to remove his shoe and sock. When he removed his sock, the bone from his big toe fell out of his toe and onto the ground. Turned out he had a very bad case of gangrene that had eaten away the flesh of his toe. He knew something was wrong but was stubborn and didn't get it checked sooner. And my big toe hurts now after typing this. Had this happen to me too. A woman came in that was an IV substance user, and all her veins had collapsed, so she used her leg veins and got a massive infection in her leg. It was black when she came in. She had put up with the pain for 6 months. The leg was amputated, but she was kicked out after she was found up shooting up in the bathroom. Terribly sad. My mother, the medical professional of our family, had a 13-year-old girl who was 9 months pregnant, in the midst of labor, dilated to 10 centimeters, and crowning in the emergency triage, swearing until she was black and blue that she was a virgin and that nobody knew what they were talking about. Her mother stood on the sidelines causing a commotion, demanding a real doctor make an appearance. Let's just say when the twins made an appearance 10 minutes later, they were all singing a different tune. I don't understand why people keep denying the undeniable. If your doc tells you that you're about to give birth, insisting on never having done the deed and being a virgin is quite pointless. Not sure of this particular girl's situation, but it's very possible that she actually believed that to be true at the time. It's called pregnancy denial, and it's considered a mental illness, I guess. It's pretty rare though, so I'm inclined to think that adolescents just don't always have proper foresight and she was just trying to stay out of trouble, and so she stuck to her story. She could also live somewhere that doesn't provide proper education on the subject, as that's a risk factor in young teen pregnancy. Alternately, she could have also been under the influence of a substance or persuaded to get drunk and then was taken advantage of. So it's possible that she didn't know, just extremely unlikely. I met a teenage girl with a full-term pregnancy ready to give birth, but her boyfriend insisted that the baby was premature because they only did the deed 6 months ago. After the baby was born, he just said that the baby grew really fast. Sure. Might be better if he never finds out, to be honest. Also, this group of stories feels like it's going to be yet another jaw-dropping example of how nowhere near enough people trust advice from their medical practitioners. A 60-year-old female came in after falling asleep and rolling on a pincushion. She had 3 2-inch needles in her left shoulder on the X-ray. We later found out she'd been trying self-acupuncture. My cousin told me about a patient who complained about her teat falling off all the time. She said she'd tried to glue it back on or use skincare creams to have it stick to her chest. Turns out she had, not sure what stage anymore, probably pretty bad, invasive lobular carcinoma. From what I remember, the tumor got so big that the skin was stretched quite a bit. Somehow, that plus friction led to an open, not healing and oozing wound which extended to the outlet valve of her chest. Well, nobody there understood how she didn't go to a doctor or a hospital earlier. Keep in mind this happened in Germany. She had a job, health insurance, and everything.
My cousin's teat fell off. She didn't have cancer, it was just a botched bosom job.
A friend's teat fell off after a reduction of her chest. She was out shopping the day after the stitches were removed and it literally fell off in her bra. She jumped in her car and sped to the doctor's office. A cop pulled her over. He didn't buy her story at first, then she showed him. He gave her an escort to the hospital. Internal medicine ward outside of New York City. 55-year-old lady was mute in the ED. Noted poor historian, but severely constipated, severe abdominal pain, needed rectal disempation, and more than just an acute workup, so gets admitted reluctantly to surgery. Next morning on rounds, she's talking a mile a minute, full-on detail about her diet and symptoms and family. Afternoon, back to mute and back to abdominal pain and constipation. 2 more days, same pattern. The team is stumped. She is blown away that we can't figure out what's wrong with her, and we feel the same way. Labs, imaging, consult teams, all coming up empty. Strict ins and outs, strict dietary restrictions, everything we can think of. The janitor comes in by chance and he's teed off that he has to change the paper towels so many gosh darn times in this one room. Seems like the whole floor is stealing them from her. Sure enough, patient has been consuming about 2,500 paper towels every 24 hours. The psych team comes in for the obligatory consultation, and of course she's mute. How do we get her to talk? 1 paper towel at a time. I think some poor intern got a paper out of that case. Hope she's doing well somewhere. I'm surprised surgery didn't figure out where the paper towels were going before the janitor. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Nurse here. One time I had a patient come in with insane intestinal trauma. Had to have his colon stitched up. Said he was fishing and fell. His rectum just happened to fall perfectly on a fishing pole. Must have been a wild night to be fishing in the buff. 1,000,000 to 1 shot, doc. 1,000,000 to 1.
Yes. Yep. Undressed and fell on it injuries are an under-recognized problem. There should be a public health campaign about them.
Too many people have gotten out of the shower, slipped and fell onto a box of cucumbers they kept in their bathroom. Not a nurse, but my mum works with nurses who have crazy stories. Here's 2 of them, both from ER nurses. A man came into the ER with a birthday candle in his wang. He'd stuck it in there to surprise his girlfriend on her birthday, but when he lit it, the melted candle wax stuck to him. And this is probably the weirdest one I've ever heard. An old woman came into the ER with a high fever, abdominal pain, dizziness, and a few other symptoms. She's showing signs of toxic shock syndrome, like when you leave a tampon in too long, so the doctor decides to check the woman to make sure nothing got stuck up there. Sure enough, she looks up there and half craps her pants when she sees 2 beady little eyes staring back at her. The doctor begins to pull it out, to which the old woman responds, "Put it back." Turns out the old woman, well past menopause, had gone to a bad witch doctor to get her help to get pregnant. The doctor's recommendation? Put a now dead turtle up there for a few days and she'd regain the ability to get pregnant.
I don't think anything can outdo the turtle story, and I think I'm done reading these stories.
Agreed. The story writer did good here. That turtle one will hurt me forever. I almost spewed at the turtle story. What in the name of Cthulhu? Agreed. Let's chalk another story onto the Made the Narrator Contemplate His Existence board.
From a nurse friend. A guy came in with burns to his entire Johnson. He tried to say he got it by trying to shoplift a hot barbecue chicken from a deli down his pants. What he was really doing was doing the deed with the chicken.
Not sure if this counts as hiding, but a patient we recently had tried to play off a rampant staph infection as just some leg swelling. Turns out that what he meant by that was that he'd had a horrible infection in and around his manly bits. Something known as Fournier's gangrene. Do yourself a favor and don't Google that. The swelling had gotten so bad that his eggplant had literally inverted. He later told us that he had to pee with a 5-gallon bucket held up to his crotch because he no longer had any idea where the pee was going to go. Since you're wondering, he went to emergency surgery within hours, which is likely to be the first of many surgeries. The only way to get rid of an infection like that is debridement in the OR plus a crap ton of antibiotics. Somehow this guy had no systemic signs of infection like fever or low blood pressure, etc., so thankfully he should pull through. Last I heard, he was likely to lose one of his testes, but I don't believe they were going to have to remove his whole Johnson. I know it's fun to talk about how gross this stuff is, but it's a very serious type of infection. This guy's life was definitely in danger, and thank goodness he didn't wait longer.
I mean, I think I would have gone to the hospital long before I found out my eggplant could invert.
I think mine just did invert reading this story.
I've been sitting here for 5 minutes trying to find the ways to properly convey my horror. Oh my god, I don't even have a way. I'm just sitting here thinking, okay, they don't mean inverted, right? It's probably not what I'm imagining. Except, I'm pretty sure it is what I'm imagining. I'm not sure I want you to confirm.
You know what it looks like when a turtle retracts its head all the way into its neck skin? It was like that, but with pus. It's an image that will haunt me till my dying day. This only happened a couple of days ago, and I feel the need to share this heavy, disgusting burden. I'm a pharmacist, and a patient came up and asked me if there was gluten in white snow, because she has a gluten sensitivity. I suppose maybe someone, somewhere tried to cut white snow with flour. Still ridiculous, but I imagine she was quite serious. I actually have celiacs, and when I was in Amsterdam, I couldn't find gluten-free edibles. When I interned in the OB-GYN department, we had a lady sent to the ER due to bleeding in her hoo-ha. When she was examined, she had a massive tumor there, the size of a football, growing between her legs. Her husband was with her. Both said that it had just appeared, and they had never noticed it before. There was absolutely no doubt that the thing had been growing for months. Sometimes, when in shock, people can be in denial of the most absurd things. I work in the lab, and the pathology department gets the foreign body items removed from a patient's body after surgery. Recent one was a chorizo sausage. Glad I wasn't there that day. A patient came in with chest pain, said they'd fallen and hit their chest on a table. X-ray was performed to evaluate for a rib fracture or a collapsed lung. The X-ray instead showed a long metallic foreign body in the left part of the chest within the heart. When questioned further, the patient admitted to lying and that they'd actually shot themselves in the chest with a nail gun. The wound wasn't bleeding, nor really noticeable. They were taken to the operating room and did quite well after open-heart surgery. Not a doctor, but an EMT. I had a guy who tried to tell us he fell while playing softball and hurt his ribs and arm. This was 10 o'clock at night. Came to find out he tried to screw his substance dealer out of some money, and the guy chased him down with a bat and beat him with it. So I guess he was kind of playing softball. Now that is breathtaking. Disguising your vicious beating as a trip and fell scenario is a bold move. Repeatedly falling onto the same bat all over your body is an incredible feat of clumsiness. Nurse here, and I'm late to the game. I've seen some serious crap, but in this story, the patient tried to hide something and I paid for it as well. Was working at a teaching hospital here in New Orleans as an agency nurse. Some of my fellow agency nurses can confirm when the staff nurses find out an agency nurse is coming in, we get the patients that the other nurses don't want to deal with. In essence, the crappiest patients on the floor, literally and figuratively. I got my reports and was walking rounds with the nurses going off shift. We walked by a patient's room and he wasn't there. Outgoing nurse says he's always going down to smoke, and that he's very demanding. He was a homeless patient there for an infected arm from IV substance abuse. I asked the nurse why he was being allowed to leave the floor regularly with an IV in his arm, and she just shrugged. About an hour later, my patient finally reappeared and shuffled into his room. I make a mental note to go into that room next for my assessment after I'm finished giving another patient their meds. I go to walk in and the door is cracked. I hear snoring, so I'm knocking, and as I open the door I say, "Hello, Mr. Addicted to Smack. I'm Sherry and I'll be your nurse today." He doesn't flinch. I know he's not dead because I could hear him breathing. I place my arm on his arm and gently shake him, and the guy comes out of it screaming like a wild bear, waving his arms, cursing, and flings a bag of white powder he's holding right at my face. I hit the code blue button because I'm legit terrified. The guy is freaking the frick out, and I look like Frosty the Blowman with a yet unidentified white powder in my hair, on my face, and shoulders of my scrubs. The code team runs in with a crash cart, sees me, sees freaking out patient, and grinds to a halt. Someone runs out and calls security, and a big fella of a respiratory therapist pins the guy down. Security runs in and handcuffs him to the bed. The nursing floor manager starts grilling him about the powder, and I hear him start insisting that it's baby powder, and I scared him while he was cleaning up, and he threw it on me. That's really the last coherent thought I had. I came to in the ER and got the story from the doc after all the security footage was reviewed. The guy was going downstairs, meeting his supplier and bringing the goods back upstairs, cutting his supply more with hospital-supplied baby powder that he'd been requesting for chafing, going back downstairs and having his customers meet him in the ER parking area. He had passed out after shooting up into his IV in the parking lot, and I came in and scared the crap out of him. He had thrown a baggie of smack and baby powder in my face. My husband had to come and get me, and I was given a note in case the agency tested me in the near future. I also had to give a statement to the police. It was simultaneously the best and worst day at work I'd ever had, and subsequently the last hospital shift I've ever worked. In conclusion, worked as a floor nurse, patient threw a bag of smack and baby powder in my face, I got messed up. Patient was arrested. A case of teenage pregnancy where Madam Mama was present. Patient was presented with amenorrhea and fatigue initially. Patient became visibly annoyed when the first test suggested is a pregnancy test. The patient and her mother insisted that she had never done the deed with anyone. Angrily, if I might add, even when the test results came back as positive. No, you quack! I'm telling you she never done the deed. Nurse here. I had a patient come in for a hip fracture. While helping her to the bathroom for the first time, the CNA noticed something hanging out of her hoo-ha. Turns out she walks around with a prolapsed uterus and thinks nothing of it. My late father was a surgeon and, when he was a resident, had a middle-aged male patient come in complaining of pain in the rectum. They examined him and found a toy lodged fairly deep. When they asked him how it happened, he looked extremely surprised that it was there and then explained, "I was lying in bed and it was on and vibrating on the bed near me, and it sort of moved on its own. I guess it found its way up my butt all by itself." Loved hearing emergency room stories from my dad, and it sucks that he's not around to tell them these days. There should be a sign up in the ER that says, "The sooner you fess up to cramming whatever it is up there, the sooner we can get it out. You won't shock us. No, really, try us." When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.